English.
Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. It's 2 p.m. here in Israel and 7 a.m. in New York. I'm Alec Pollard coming to you live with the top stories in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The prompter is not. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit the White House in the near future. The two leaders spoke by phone and discussed the importance of and commitment to dismantling Hamas's military capabilities and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, as well as efforts to expand regional peace accords. If confirmed, the trip would mark Netanyahu's fifth White House visit since Trump returned to office in January. The call comes after Trump warned Israel not to destabilize Syria or its new leadership, days after IDF soldiers clashed with gunmen in southern Syria. Trump also posted to his Truth Social account, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." Trump says he is very satisfied with Syria's performance under its new president, Ahmad al-Shara, a former commander in al-Qaeda terror group who made a historic White House visit in November. The phone call also follows Netanyahu's formal request for a presidential pardon from President Herzog in his corruption trial, a move Trump has repeatedly supported, both publicly in the Knesset and in a subsequent letter. The IDF says it has eliminated a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in a targeted strike in Gaza against multiple terror targets and commanders across the Strip. Ala el-Din Abed el-Nasser Hassan Qudari, a Nukhba commander in the Islamic Jihad Gaza City Brigade, was killed in the operation, which the IDF says is a retaliation to Hamas's violations of the ceasefire. Qudari infiltrated Kibbutz Nachal Oz during the October 7th massacre and continued to direct attacks on Israeli troops and civilians throughout the war. Nachal Oz was among the community's hardest hit, with dozens killed, wounded, and abducted. In further security news, 2 young Israelis were lightly wounded in a suspected stabbing attack near the Jewish community of Atarot, north of Jerusalem. The assailant was immediately neutralized. Earlier, IDF troops killed a separate assailant who attempted a second car ramming near Hebron. The driver rammed an IDF soldier at a junction near Kiryat Arba and then tried to hit another military unit in the Hebron area. A soldier was lightly wounded before the assailant was shot. In Beirut, Pope Leo continues his mission of peace, addressing thousands at Martyrs Square, just miles from areas hit by recent clashes between Israel and Hezbollah. The first US-born pope, Leo is using his visit to urge Lebanon's fractured communities to reject violence and embrace coexistence, even as the country struggles with economic collapse and the effects of Hezbollah's war with Israel. He met Christian, Sunni, Shiite, and Druze leaders, calling them builders of peace, and warned that fear and prejudice must not be allowed to dominate the region's future. The Pope said peace is still possible and must be pursued.
In an age when coexistence can seem like a distant dream, the people of Lebanon, while embracing different religions, stand as a powerful reminder that fear, distrust, and prejudice do not have the final word, and that unity, reconciliation, and peace are possible.
And joining us now to unpack these latest developments are Dr. Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, and Ruthie Bloom, senior editor at JNS, the Jewish News Syndicate, joining us from New York. Thank you, both of you, for being here on the program. It's a fifth meeting between Trump and Netanyahu. It seems like the leaders are working closely together. The U.S.-Israel relationship is solid, or is it? Because there is a schism brewing there in the Republican Party over support for Israel. Dan, how do you assess the relationship at this moment?
Yeah, good morning to everyone from New York. This is a fateful moment for Israel, for the Middle East region, and for the U.S.-Israel relationship specifically. There is essentially an internal contradiction between President Trump's vision for peace, security, and stability and prosperity in the Middle East, and the reality on the ground, particularly with Hezbollah, with all of the radical Sunni factions in Syria, and the chaos that's reigning over Israel's northern border, as well as the continued war in Gaza. Trump is particularly impatient to get to his vision, while the security realities on the ground dictate a completely different story, where Israel has absolute intelligence about plans to attack Israel over the north, hopefully to prevent another October 7th. But clearly Trump, whose security forces have worked with al-Shara's interior ministry to foil ISIS attempts and missile factories, is impatient to get to his vision, but it simply is not reflected in the really acute security threats on Israel from both Lebanon and Syria.
Right. So we're mentioning Syria here because we saw Trump there just now talking about how Israel has to have good relationship with Syria, work with al-Shara. So I want to ask you, Ruti, about this issue of Syria, because Trump seems really to buy into the image of President al-Shara as a statesman, maybe even a peacemaker. But this guy used to be part of Al-Qaeda. Syrian government forces earlier this year took part in the jihadist massacre of the Druze minority in southern Syria. So which version is the real al-Shara?
Okay, well, you're absolutely right, and so is Dan. But I'd just like to backtrack for a second, and you mentioned that there could be a rift because of the rift within the Republican Party regarding Israel. At the moment, so far, Trump has not succumbed to the pressure of what I call his Tucker Carlson wing.
Right.
And he has been very clear about that. He says, I'm MAGA, and I know what MAGA is. And he has been really staunchly supporting Israel, and not just that, but not behaving the least bit like an isolationist. However, he is in fantasy land about Syria at the moment. As Dan pointed out, the time isn't ripe at the moment. It doesn't reflect the reality on the ground. Now, what we saw was President Trump in the White House spritzing al-Shara with his perfume, his called Victory 4547. Right. And he spritzed him with the perfume, and he said, oh, he's a great guy. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because this is Trump's style. He does that with dictators. He's done it. He did it with Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani in New York, who came to the White House. He says, "Oh, this guy's a great guy. That guy's a great guy." And when someone pisses him off, he doesn't put up with it. So the question is he more anxious to get these so-called peace deals, moving before the time is ripe? Because actually, al-Shara, it's not just that al-Shara was part of al-Qaeda. He was a leader of that and ISIS. And as you pointed out, he has committed massacres inside Syria. This isn't Israel's fault. And Israel, I'm hoping, and I see that Netanyahu is not giving in to that because of the dangers on Israel's northern border. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with Trump. I don't know if he's going to accept it, but it's true that he is enamored of his plan. He imagines that expanding the Abraham Accords, you just wave a wand and it's all happening. He clearly doesn't understand the Middle East properly. Now, that doesn't mean that his policies are not going to work. We'll see. It's too early to tell. But one thing we know is you can't trust what he says. What he says, he says. He talks a lot and he tweets a lot, or you could say posts on Truth Social. But his behavior often is slightly different. So we'll see.
I just want to ask you about that. You said about the time being ripe. Let's go over to Dan here. The time being ripe. Is the time ever ripe, right? Because Trump, he's a bit different maybe than the European leaders in the way he's so outspokenly supportive of Israel, but he seems to share the same, let's say, optimism regarding various groups in the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Syrians, al-Shara, that in the end of the day, you can strike a deal with them and you'll have this peace and cooperation in the Middle East. I mean, is that even possible at any point? Ruthie, I'll get you back to you. You'll add to that. But Dan, first of all, you tell me, what do you think? Is it even possible at any point in the future, in the near future?
It's a good question. We need to keep in mind that Trump is a transactionalist. Trump is an economic warrior and believes as a pragmatic leader who understands, I think, how to mobilize American power. And we've seen him do that a number of times in his second term. However, as Ruthie said, you can't wish something to be true. And in his career, which has been very a lot of ups and also some downs in the real estate business, he has engaged in high-risk transactions. We stand right now at the precipice of one of the highest risk transactions that any U.S. president has tried to effect. And he is under enormous pressure from Muslim Brotherhood sponsors such as Turkey, Qatar, particularly, in terms of pressuring Israel and isolating Israel and using the Palestinian issue, per se, as a sledgehammer in order to get Israel to heal. This is a very dangerous Oslo period strategy that we've seen in Gaza can backfire on the U.S. administration, on Trump's 20-point plan. And the key here is not to pressure Israel, but to support Israel unconditionally, because the only way that the Middle East will get to Trump's 20-point plan and Abraham Security Alliance is by backing Israel unconditionally in order to neuter and uproot these Hamas affiliates, whether they are on the Sunni side or those that are working like the Houthis, who today are working in Syria together with Iranian-backed proxies. This is something that Trump and Netanyahu are going to have to iron out in the White House, because we see here a collision between two very close allies coming because of the expectations of Trump, who almost miraculously got all these Arab and Muslim countries to back stage one of the 20-point plan, which did return the 20 live hostages from October 7th and beyond. But that doesn't mean in any way that the type of immediacy will bring security and stability in the Middle East, but rather a staged dismantling, as Israel has been doing very effectively since September of 2024. That's what these two leaders are going to have to iron out at the White House during this fifth visit. upcoming.
Right. Two leaders. We talked a lot about one leader, Trump. There's the other side of the equation, Netanyahu. According to you, Dan, you're basically saying that Trump is kind of pushing ahead prematurely and maybe dangerously for Israel. Ruti, I want to ask you then, how should Netanyahu deal with this situation? Because he can antagonize the United States. Israel can't afford to do that. On the other hand, he does need to maybe put some barriers here on unrealistic expectations from Trump on some of these issues.
No, absolutely. And you know what? This is the one downside we're seeing of having such a pro-Israel president in the White House. It's much easier. It turns out it was easier for Netanyahu to end up having to stand up to President Biden and Secretary of State Blinken by saying, listen,
and Obama
you guys,
back in the day.
Yeah, and well, Obama, of course, but I'm talking about since the October 7th massacre, saying, look, you guys, I'll play ball with you, but if you don't do what we need, we'll fight with our fingernails. He doesn't talk like that to Trump because Trump is genuinely a warm friend of Israel's. Now, Dan mentioned the Oslo Accords. He said, this is this dangerous Oslo fantasy. Now, one positive is that the Israeli public, certainly Netanyahu and the Israeli government, but also the Israeli public everybody has had it in Israel with that Oslo type of fantasy. That's number one. And number two, there is a big difference in having in the White House an administration that doesn't automatically, with a knee-jerk assumption that Israel is in the wrong, even when it's pushing for peace accords that may be unrealistic. It has, so far, President Trump has not viewed Israel as the aggressor in the conflict. And that's a big difference between now and the Oslo period. I think I have no doubt that Netanyahu will have to impress upon Trump that it's all well and good to get these peace deals going, but that there are tunnels, weapons being moved. There's Hamas. Also, Trump, by the way, about Gaza. Suddenly, there's this idea that maybe we'll split up Gaza and we'll have a Hamas side and an international side. And suddenly we're saying, oh, whoa, I thought Hamas was supposed to be eliminated, not put on another side of some phony border. So, there are many worrisome things happening here. And I trust that Netanyahu will explain that to Trump. Whether that will work, it remains to be seen.
What do you think, Dan? Netanyahu, do you think he's walking this tightrope correctly at the moment? What should he do in the face of a pro-Israel president? Most people would agree, but one who maybe is pushing these unrealistic peace deals on Israel that could backfire on Israel spectacularly. Dan, you with us? Maybe.
Well, I think that Netanyahu is the best leader that Israel. Yes, I think that. Yeah, are you hearing me? Yeah, I think that Netanyahu is the best possible leader in order to protect Israel's vital interests here. He first of all, Netanyahu understands what it means for Israel to have defensible borders, and that also means buffer zones from Syria. That means buffer zones from the north. And this is the security sense, the security reality that Netanyahu is going to have to explain to Trump to get him just to slow down a little bit on implementing a secure path to what both leaders want, which is ultimately a Middle East which is more secure and more stable and more prosperous. But these two leaders, I think, run into one another on the pathway and the timeline of that pathway to get to this shared vision.
Right. We didn't mention Hezbollah here. Pope Leo, right now, he's in Lebanon. He's calling for peace, de-escalation between the factions. And we did see maybe a little bit of some of those factions in Lebanon finally calling, for Hezbollah not to drag them into wars. Is Trump able maybe also on that front to do something? Or what do you think is, Ruti, what do you think his plan is over there concerning Lebanon?
Lebanon is, listen, I don't like to talk about the Pope. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm just sick and tired of these woke popes, um, you know, and all this peace, love, and talking about it as though everybody's the same and we just all have to get along and it's baloney. Okay. But Lebanon, here's the problem with Lebanon. Israel and Lebanon signed a deal a year ago, a little more than a year ago, a ceasefire deal. And the understanding was that Israel will not endanger itself. In other words, if the Lebanese army doesn't contain Hezbollah and doesn't disarm it, Israel will have to do the job. And that's what's been happening for a year. And that's why Israel keeps attacking certain targets in Lebanon. And anybody here's the thing. If Lebanon wants a peaceful society, it's got to contain Hezbollah. And attacking Israel for doing it for the Lebanese government is just chutzpah beyond belief, is what I say.
Dan, what do you think? Do you agree?
Well, nobody like Ruthie Bloom can put it so directly. There is a real problem here in Pope Leo's Oslo declaration of what they call the solution. What we are witnessing is, again, the exploitation of the Palestinian issue in order to mask the regional threat to U.S. interests in the Middle East. And this is the poisonous paradigm that has to be broken and shattered forever. Because when you have the Pope, who is leader of well over a billion, 1.2 billion Christians in the world, even more, you have a very big problem in terms of Israel being isolated again, using this false flag Palestinian-Israeli conflict paradigm. We are not in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Let's get it straight. The West, with Israel in the front line, is facing jihad. This is Islamist warfare. Islamist warfare we see in Gaza, we see it in Lebanon, we see it in Syria, we see it with the Houthis in Yemen, we see it in Judea and Samaria, what is some people call the former West Bank of Jordan. We see it all over the Middle East. That is the reality that Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu must expose, educate, and explain every moment of every day. This is Islamist religious warfare, and this is the long war. It is not something given to territorial solutions or immediate political compromise. We have to get that message out because Israel has not succeeded over the decades in underscoring that message. This is the war. It is religious warfare against the West. Israel is on the front line fighting that religious war. That's the bottom line here.
Do you think Trump gets that this is a religious war with jihadists? He seems to understand it maybe a little bit more than some other world leaders, but he still seems to have some blind spots. I mean, look at El Shara. A lot of people would say that he is an ex-jihadist pretending not to be, but Trump seems fully enamored with him as this, new revolutionary leader for Syria who's going to bring it into a new dawn. Does Trump get it?
This is the danger of this blood sport. Oh, sorry, Ruthie. Go ahead.
All I wanted to say was he might get it, in some part of intellectually in some sense. But as Dan had pointed out, he's transactional. And I think the trouble is that he actually believes that if you make a good deal and, you give these guys the planes they want, the bombers they want, and these guys something else they want, that's really all that matters. And, this is not real estate. These are not real estate deals in the Middle East.
Right. Dan Diker and Ruthie Bloom, thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. Always interesting trying to unpack Trump's motivations and what he's planning for the future. And we'll see really when this meeting does indeed take place, if anything outstanding is revealed. Thank you, the both of you, for joining us on the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Israel's new state-of-the-art weapon, the Iron
Thank
Beam
you.
laser defense system, is about to go operational, and military officials say it will change everything about air defense. Starting December 30th, it will provide a high-speed, cutting-edge response to drones, rockets, missiles, and mortars. The system has already intercepted dozens of aerial threats during the war, including nearly 40 Hezbollah drones last October. With longer range and the ability to handle simultaneous attacks, Iron Beam is a significant upgrade to the current Iron Dome defense system, and unlike missiles, which cost over $100,000 per interception, firing the laser could be as cheap as turning on a light, promising massive savings for Israel. The system will be deployed nationwide, operating alongside the already existing Iron Dome commands, striking threats instantly, often before sirens are even needed. This marks the first full-scale operational deployment of a high-energy laser weapon in the world, and it could change the future of air defense globally. Now let's go from Iron Dome defense system to the founder and CEO of an organization that calls itself the Economic Iron Dome, Barzel Media, which is Hebrew for Iron Media. So Brian Spivak, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much, Alec. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon from Tel Aviv.
Why do you call yourselves the Economic Iron Dome?
Good question. So basically, we have created an agency that is supporting pro-Israel creators by matching them up with paid brand partnerships. So we're essentially ensuring that anybody who's standing up for Israel and the Jewish people has the economic capacity to do so. So we're creating this economic protection, this economic Iron Dome for anyone that wants to use their voice to stand up for Israel.
In today's media landscape, with YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, independent creators have a lot of influence on public opinion, but it's not easy to sustain those activities financially, especially for the Israeli or pro-Israel voices. I mean, what are the challenges that they face in getting partnerships, sponsorships, to help them continue their activities, and how do you help them do that?
Yeah, so it actually goes back to the founding of Barzel Media, how we got started. So actually, after October 7th, I found myself volunteering at the Hostage Forum, and I basically built and ran the influencer program there. My team was responsible for ensuring that influencers and celebrities could be a positive voice for the hostages and really tell the individual human story. What would Omer be doing right now if he wasn't in captivity? What would Romy be doing? What were their favorite foods to be eating? And this is kind of the basis for how everything got started. And we actually had food influencers creating beautiful campaigns that were in tribute to the hostages based upon food that they like to eat or cook. And one of the things that I was noticing very early on was that any influencer or celebrity who was using their platform to stand up for Israel and the Jewish people and the hostages, they started to lose their brand partnerships overnight. And if you're a content creator, that is your main or only source of revenue. And these were our digital warriors. They're fighting our PR war, as we love to say. Israel doesn't have like a proper PR system in place, and we rely on these digital warriors to use their platform. And they lost all economic incentive to continue doing that. So I noticed this very early on, and after about 4 or 5 months of volunteering, I ended up leaving the Hostage Forum. I officially quit my job and opened up Barzel Media, which is an agency specifically geared towards supporting anyone who's using their platform to stand up for Israel and the Jewish people. So to answer your question, it is a massive challenge that has not gone away and continues to be a major problem for anyone using their voice to stand up for Israel.
Right, definitely getting those partnerships, those sponsors is very difficult for pro-Israel voices in the current landscape. And I don't think people really understand, and you just mentioned it there, how crucial it is, those independent voices, because the Israeli PR, I know the basically the concept or the way people understand it abroad is that Israel has this amazing, Hasbara network of the government, and it really isn't quite there. I mean, it's the independent creators who really do the work for Israel, and if it wasn't for them, then I don't know how the Israeli, let's say, voice would be in the space at the moment.
For sure. I think we have so much to thank these Hasbara creators and what they've done and how many of them have transformed their platforms from being, fashion, beauty, lifestyle, fitness over to being just about Israel. And they've done an incredible job but the thing that's actually happening now is that they've done such an incredible job is that their platforms have actually just become, in a lot of cases, not all cases, this echo chamber where we are trying to create this narrative of what Israel's all about and, really restore our PR. But I think what we've forgotten is the actual delivery mechanism, how we get that information out there to the hearts and minds, right? We have tons of organizations that are geared towards fighting online anti-Semitism, influencing governance and policy, and they're doing a great job. But how do we actually influence the hearts and minds of the folks and the audience that's on the ground, the 46% that we like to say are kind of indifferent about Israel? How do we influence them? And so this is one of the initiatives that Barzell Media has started to specifically get outside that echo chamber and use our economic influence, using our startup prowess to actually really influence how we win this PR war, or at least get back to where we were before October 7th.
Right. I mean, it's a cliche already at this point. Israel wins the ground war, loses the PR war. Everybody knows it. Maybe this will help Israel in that aspect, and also reaching those audiences, like you said, who aren't always reached with the message. It's just not just the message, but who you deliver it to and reaching the right people. So Brian Spivak, the CEO and founder of Barzell Media, the media Iron Dome, so to speak, of this war. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Alec. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. You can scan the QR code on your screen for all the latest updates coming out of Israel. I'm Alec Pollard. Thanks for watching.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Week Israel, the show where we recap for you some of the positive highlights that are coming out of Israel from this week. I'm your host, Diva Klein, and coming up on today's show, Israeli restaurants among the top ranked from around the world. Learn about food waste and how Leket Israel is making a difference. And the B'nai Menashe community are returning to Israel from India. The prestigious La Liste ranking has been published, and ranked among the world's best 1,000th restaurants are 8 Israeli powerhouses spanning all the way from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now, ILTV's India Naftali went on a little culinary trip to visit one of the restaurants on the list.
I'm standing here outside OCD Tel Aviv that was recently ranked as one of the top 1,000 restaurants in the entire world. And for such a small country like Israel, to secure 8 out of the 1,000 best restaurants in the world is quite impressive. The war has taken a toll on Israel's restaurant industry, but daily life continues. In the evenings, the streets are still busy and restaurants are full. Israel's food scene has always been built on a blend of North African, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean flavors. It's a reflection of Jewish diaspora traditions and a cutting-edge fusion movement that has taken hold of the Israeli restaurant industry in the recent years. Now, that mix is earning global praise. Despite years of war that shook the restaurants industry, 8 Israeli restaurants have been ranked among La Liste's top 1,000 restaurants in the world. 7 are in Tel Aviv, and 1 is in Jerusalem. Leading Israel's lineup is OCD Tel Aviv. It's a tasting menu restaurant by chef Raz Rahav, which received the highest ranking in the country. Next is Mashia, known for its fresh local ingredients and modern use of spices. Right behind it is a restaurant called Elena at the Norman Hotel, run by chefs Daniel Zor and Omer Shadmi. Other Tel Aviv favorites also made the list. Manta Ray, a beachfront seafood classic, Claro, a farm-to-table restaurant, and Pastel, led by chef Gal Ben Moshe at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. Jerusalem also claimed a spot with Chakra, a 25-year fixture of the capital's food scene. The final Israeli entry is Popina in the Neve Tzedek neighborhood in Tel Aviv, where the menu is built around 5 cooking techniques, from curing to slow cooking. For Israel, this year's recognition means something more. It is a reminder that even in difficult times, its culinary talent continues to innovate, inspire, and draw the world's attention.
What an incredible achievement for the Israeli restaurant scene. Well, I had the chance to interview Chef Ran Shmueli, the owner of Claro, one of the restaurants that made the La Liste ranking. This interview was aired as part of our ILTV On the Hour, updates from across the region every hour on the hour. Check us out on Screen IL for our 24/7 channel. But for now, have a look at this exclusive interview. Now we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with one of the chefs of these ranked restaurants. I'd like to welcome to the show Chef Ran Shmueli, who runs Claro in the Sarona complex. Claro follows a farm-to-table approach with a menu that's based on local seasonal produce. Ran, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, congratulations on this achievement, on this ranking. That's 77 points in the La Liste ranking. Could you share, what this ranking means for you today, and maybe also discuss some of the challenges that Claro has had to face over the past 2 years of war?
First of all, we're really, really flattered, and it's a bit surreal to talk about restaurants after all these breaking news. It's a hard work without wars, and wars makes it really, really harder. And Claro in Tel Aviv is really it's a big business. It's we have feeding about 2 million people since we've been open 13 years ago, and we have 150 employees. And it's quite a project. We are connected with more than 10 farmers. And we have a guy, Shlomo, who is driving all over with our car in Israel, collecting all the good stuff. And we're trying to keep on the good job, I feel it's a mission to all over the world that Israel is not only about war and terrorism. It's also about good food and culture. And I believe, we don't need to have wars, but we need to eat. We can't live without eating. So this is, I feel really, I feel lucky, and I feel that we are recognized in the world, and it doesn't go without saying.
Right. So can you share a little bit about this process of the ranking? I mean, was there a critic who came into the restaurant? Did you know that this was happening? Did you expect it at all? Walk us through that.
No, actually, 1.5 years ago, I met La Liste vice president. She's a woman, and we were talking about it, and she said they're trying to give it from another perspective, to choose the restaurants, not like the Michelin guide or the other guides. Actually, I didn't understand exactly what they're doing. Of course, we don't know when or who came to the restaurant. I don't think somebody particularly came for the restaurant. They are collecting all the reports, all the rates from people, from regular people, all the everything that was advertising, pictures and so on, all over the media. And since Claro is feeding a lot of people, I think that's, and if I may say, we are serving good food, and the atmosphere is amazing, and the restaurant is really beautiful, as you can see in the pictures. So here we are in the list. By the way, the 2nd year already.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And, the list that at least that came out this year, it's very interesting to me that, 8 Israeli restaurants have made the list despite the wartime challenges. You say it's nice to know Israel, not just for wars, but I think that that's incredibly impressive. And to me, that's a reflection of just sheer
resilience, but perhaps there's just something great about Israeli cuisine, which is, often seen as this meticulous blend of cultures and therefore flavors. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the inspiration behind Claro is and what type of cuisine you specialize in?
Yes. At my beginning of my career, I wanted to bring Europe and international food into Israel. And then one day I started to walk in the market. I started in Carmel Market, and then I went to all over Israel. I'm talking about 25 years ago when I was 2 years old. And I realized that there's so much in Israel that we can work with, and that's where it's all started. And I'm not sure Claro is not an Israeli restaurant. Claro is a Mediterranean restaurant, collecting all the goods from all the Mediterranean shore, at least one part of it, and one side of it, and I don't know, as a chef, already I'm 41 years in the business, to see things are growing and then being served on the plates, that's the whole story, And I believe today a lot of people are doing good food, but you need to have a story. A story, by the way, is not only the food, it's the plates you're serving in. We're trying to use as much as local artists to do our plates. And the atmosphere and the vibe, and of course the service, which is really homey. I think that's what helped us during the war, which unfortunately it's not over yet. By the way, we are kind of soldiers. We are here and we are always going to be here, and we're serving our customers. We opened in London 1 year ago. I'm not sure it's the best time in the year or in the world to open Israeli restaurants or Israeli connected restaurants in the world, but I think it's part of our missions as chefs, and if I may say, mature chefs, old chefs, to spread all over our kitchen, our Mediterranean kitchen, which is a melting pot, of course, because people in Israel came from all over the world. And that's what makes the Israeli food or our part of the Mediterranean really, really interesting.
Absolutely. And like you say, the whole ranking system in and of itself is supposedly user-based. So that means that it was satisfied customers that put in the good word and ended up revealing this ranking.
I need to say thank you. I need to say thank you for those people who came to Claro during the last few years, which wasn't, let's not forget the coronavirus. And we went through a lot of problematic times, and the customer were there, we were there, and they really appreciate it. I was planting flowers when things were really sad, but I believe I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. And that's my part, I can't, I'm not in the army anyway, although I was in the army. And that's
but everybody has their own role in the war, and everybody contributes in a certain way. And you're filling bellies and putting smiles on faces, so we absolutely love to see it. But we are out of time, so we have to cut the interview short. Baran Shmueli, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And speaking of food, did you know that Israel as a country has lost about $57 billion in food value over the past decade? What's more alarming is that 486,000 Israeli households suffer from food insecurity. Here to fix the problem is Leket Israel, working with BDO to combat food waste and save the country millions. Take a look.
Israelis threw away billions of dollars of food in the last decade. This is especially concerning considering how many families in the country suffer with food insecurity. The new food waste report shows how much money and nutritious food is being lost every single year. But it also shows that the tools to fix the problem already exist. The 10th annual Food Waste and Rescue Report from BDO and Leket Israel, the country's national food bank, shows Israel has lost about $57 billion in food value over the past decade.
The report, prepared with the Ministries of Environmental Protection and Health, warns that food loss remains one of Israel's most expensive problems. However, this year's report does show a positive trend. Israeli consumers are wasting less food, a drop of 13.3% per person. But with population growth and rising living costs, the total volume of waste remains very high.
Food waste affects Israel in 3 major ways.
In 2024 alone, Israel threw away 2.6 million tons of food, worth about $7 billion. That is nearly 40% of the country's entire food production and equal to 1.3% of the national GDP. Socially, it makes life hard for families who already struggle to afford healthy food. The average Israeli family discarded about $2,915 worth of food last year. Meanwhile, 1.5 million Israelis face food insecurity. Health costs associated with food insecurity are even higher, reaching about $1.57 billion a year. These costs include chronic illnesses such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, and other conditions linked to poor nutrition. And environmentally, food waste uses water, land, and energy that cannot be recovered, costing Israel about $1.14 billion annually in lost resources and pollution. But Israel has built a strong foundation for change to reduce food waste in places like restaurants, army bases, farms, or at home. These solutions include expanding food rescue operations in farms and supermarkets, using the Food Donation Act to increase safe donations, and implementing the national plan that sets targets for cutting waste and redirecting surplus food to families in need. Leket has also been working with government ministries, pushing for new laws and helping shape the national plan. They say the next step is to keep the momentum going so these plans turn into real, large-scale change, because the level of waste is still far too high. These plans are expected to save billions and support lower and middle-income families.
Leket says Israel already has a scalable system for food rescue. What it needs now, they say, is funding, coordination, and national commitment. Their goal is an Israel where food isn't thrown away while families go hungry.
And we had the honor of hosting Leket Israel founder Joseph Gittler and BDO chief economist Chen Herzog to discuss all of their latest operations. Let's see.
A new decade summary report from Leket Israel and BDO shows both the dramatic progress of the last 10 years and the enormous challenges that remain. A decade ago, Israel had no national policy on food waste. Today, after years of pressure from Leket Israel and cooperation with the health and environment ministries, Israel finally has its first national plan to reduce food loss. Still, the cost is staggering: 211 billion shekels in wasted food over 10 years, while 1.5 million Israelis face food insecurity. Joining me now are Joseph Gittler, founder of Leket Israel, and Chen Herzog, chief economist at BDO. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you.
Hi. So Joseph, let me start with you. Take us back 10 years. There was no policy, no national strategy. Where were we then, and what progress has been made ever since?
So the good news is we now have, as you mentioned, this national policy. There's much more awareness among the population. There's more awareness and interest from the government and different government bodies. And so we're moving in the right direction. The problem is that while Israelis are wasting less, this latest report talks about less waste, going from 300 kilos a year per person to 260 kilos. Our population has grown dramatically since we put out the first report, so the amount of food waste is even greater than it was 10 years ago. Leket's grown over the last 10 years, but we're not close to solving this issue. We need a bigger push, and we need a lot more awareness from the population. I would say also, this has to bother people. And if it doesn't really bother people, and it's a shame because it's money in your pocket. When people waste food, sometimes it's hard to envision the environmental costs. It's hard to see down that stream of what it does when food goes to waste. So we need to talk to people about their pockets. And especially, we even see waste among those who can't afford it, which is an incredible thing to see.
And Chen, even with the progress, the country lost 26 billion shekels in food just last year. What does that say about where we stand today?
So we have to understand really the problem or the magnitude of food waste. 39% of the food consumed and produced in Israel is lost, it's thrown away. And this causes economic problem, environmental problem, food security and health problem. So let's start from the economic problem. At the end of the day, food loss really means that we, as civilians, pay more. And this number of 211 billion shekels over the last decade means that every household in Israel, every family, lost 70,000 shekels in the last decade. And it all translates to standard of living. If we throw the food at home, of course it costs us money. But not only the food that we throw at home is costly, because even when food is lost throughout the entire value chain, in the agriculture, in the industry, in the retail shops, it all translates to higher cost of living. And I think we saw this impact, this economic impact, very clearly in the past 2 years during the wartime, because wartime caused more food loss. We couldn't reach many of the fields. There were not enough workers, agricultural workers, to pick up the food, which resulted in costs increasing. So we had more food waste, more expensive fruits and vegetables. And those people with food insecurity, their situation also only worsened. So the economic equation is very simple. Rather than throwing this food away, we should rescue it and feed the needy, and it's a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm. Now, you, Joseph, have worked with ministries, you pushed for legislation, and helped shape the new national plan. What still needs to be done to turn this momentum into real large-scale change? So,
I don't want to get into trouble with the viewers, but we need to make... I'm going to give an example of a change that we need. I love where I live. I love that garbage is picked up 3 times a week. We're a little generous in this country when it comes to some of the things that we do. So, for example, you have countries around the world where to open your garbage can, you need to swipe your credit card, okay? And it's weighed. Now, the most expensive and heaviest things we throw away is actually wasted food. And so we need to change the way we look at garbage. We need to change the way we look at food waste. Food, even with everyone's protest about the cost of living in this country and the cost of food, we don't see much change. People take great pride, which I can understand. Everyone wants to be generous. Everyone wants their tables to be full. And of course, we can't take any chances with not having enough food to feed our population. But like most countries, we're producing way more than we need. And so we need to change things around a little bit in our attitudes towards food and towards waste. And maybe when it becomes a little more expensive, as an example, to waste food, then people will start to take it more seriously.
I understand. It's a very interesting thought. Now, the report links food loss directly to rising produce prices. So I'll ask you, Chen, especially since the war, why is reducing food waste now an economic priority and not just a social one?
So what the report illustrates is that food rescue is not only philanthropic work, it's also economics. Because what do? We take food we invested a lot of money, a lot of efforts to produce it, to grow it, and then we take all this value and throw it away. So what actually food rescue does is it takes all this lost value and returns it back to the needy. And the economic equation is that to rescue 1 kilogram of food costs about 1 shekel. But the economic benefit of this food is 3.6 shekels. So we take 1 shekel and we convert it or we enlarge it by 3.6 times.
Well, Joseph and Chen of Leket Israel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in a powerful story, the Jewish homeland proves time and again that its name precedes itself, the only home for Jews around the world. And now a new initiative to bring the Bnei Menashe community of India to Israel is underway, underscoring the desire to boost Aliyah, strengthen ties with India, and also allow the Bnei Menashe tribe their right to return home. Have a look.
Israel's government has now approved a 5-year plan to bring the majority of the remaining Bnei Menashe community from India to Israel. The decision, submitted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Aliyah and Integration Minister Ophir Sofer, will enable about 5,800 community members to make Aliyah by the year 2030. Around 1,200 are expected to arrive by the end of 2026. There are currently an estimated 5,000 Bnei Menashe already living in Israel, most having arrived over the past 2 decades under previous government initiatives. The Bnei Menashe live primarily in the northeastern Indian states of Mizoram and Manipur, within the Kuki-Chin and Mizo communities. They are descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, and are considered among India's last remaining Jewish communities. Under the plan, all new arrivals will undergo Orthodox conversion through the chief rabbinate. They will mainly settle in the north of the country, part of a broader effort to rebuild and strengthen the communities of the Galilee region following the war. Prime Minister Netanyahu called the move an important and Zionist decision, saying it will provide a boost to the north and help reunite families long divided between India and Israel. Aliyah Minister Sofer praised the decision as part of a wider wave of immigration in recent years, saying this aliyah strengthens Israel's resilience, solidarity, and national renewal. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said the move marks a renewed connection of brothers who have carried the yearning for Zion for generations. A government delegation is set to travel to India within days to begin processing applications. The operation will be coordinated by the Chief Rabbinate, the Conversion Authority, the Population and Immigration Authority, the Foreign Ministry, and the Jewish Agency. The first phase of the plan is budgeted at 90 million shekels through 2026. The funds will cover immigration costs, conversion, housing and absorption centers, Hebrew language programs, and employment support, helping the new arrivals integrate smoothly into their communities in the north.
And that's a wrap for today's Good Week Israel. I hope we've helped to deliver some positive news that you get to now take with you into this week ahead. As always, I'm Divo Klein. Take care. Thank you so much for watching.
Americans for Ben-Gurion University brought resilience, hope, and humor to New York City Benefit.
We are supporting a fabulous university that serves Southern Israel, supporting their students, supporting their people.
Campaign efforts.
A4BGU's New York City Benefit celebrated 50 years of excellence at the Goldman Medical School, an institution renamed in honor of Lloyd Goldman's parents.
My sisters and I named in our parents. So it's the Joyce and Irving Goldman Medical School, and my sister Katja and my sister Dorian will be here this evening, and we are thrilled about peace, about Israel, and about Ben-Gurion University.
The Joyce and Harvey Goldman Family Foundation announced a $2 million matching grant to support the future of medicine, investing in BGU curriculum, students, and faculty. One of the universities that was hit hard was Ben-Gurion University. Hundreds of students found themselves returning to wear uniforms.
The university itself lost about 110 of its members and families on the 7th of October. And a number of our students and graduates were taken hostage by the Hamas, mainly from the Nova Music Festival. Over 6,000 of our students have been on reserve military duty. Some have been killed killed and wounded. It's been a difficult time, but we are resilient. We're going to move forward and make Israel better and stronger.
We heard the testimony of Sasha Trufanov, a Ben-Gurion University alumnus and hostage survivor who suffered 498 days in Hamas captivity.
Started hearing shootings coming closer and closer, voices of speaking, shouting. We thought we had a discussion between me and my fiancée, Sapir. She said it's Arabic. I said that no, it's Hebrew. I wanted to believe, like there are soldiers.
And a testimony of Noah Shuker, a fourth-year medical student and casualty officer in the IDF, that shared what the importance of A4BGU.
They make sure that we have everything we need. I can say, as a student who also been in reserve service for over 400 days, they made sure that I could really just stay on top of my studies, not miss any test. I didn't miss any lecture. I had everything that I needed in terms of marathons and tutoring and psychological support. They really made sure that we would see social workers, and we had talks with regular talks with psychologists, making sure really that the university is doing everything they can to protect us and to keep us on top of our studies and in good shape.
You could feel the sense of mission and goodwill among those who came to support the people of Israel and Ben-Gurion University. The evening concluded with a powerful message to the people of Israel.
For me, the most important thing for Jews around the world is to go to Israel and share the love.
The United States is in lockstep, and there is a large part of the United States that loves Israel and will be behind them, whatever it is.
Israel's only English news channel, bringing you the headlines that matter every hour, straight from the center of where it's all unfolding.
Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Alec Pollard, coming to you live from Israel with the top stories in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit the White House in the near future. The two leaders spoke by phone and discussed the importance of and commitment to dismantling Hamas's military capabilities and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, as well as efforts to expand regional peace accords. If confirmed, the trip would mark Netanyahu's fifth White House visit since Trump returned to office in January. The call comes after Trump warned Israel not to destabilize Syria or its new leadership, days after IDF soldiers clashed with gunmen in southern Syria. Trump posted to his Truth Social account, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." Trump added that he is very satisfied with Syria's performance under its new president, Ahmed al-Shara, a former commander in the al-Qaeda terror group who made a historic White House visit in November. The IDF says it has eliminated a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in a targeted strike in Gaza against multiple terror targets and commanders across the Strip. Ala al-Din Abed el-Nasser Hassan Qudari, a Nukhba commander in the Islamic Jihad Gaza City Brigade, was killed in the operation, which the IDF says is a retaliation to Hamas's violations of the ceasefire in November. Qudari infiltrated kibbutz Nachal Oz during the October 7th massacre and continued to direct attacks on Israeli troops and civilians throughout the war. Nachal Oz was among the community's hardest hit, with dozens killed, wounded, and abducted. In further security news, two young Israelis were lightly wounded in a suspected stabbing attack near the Jewish community of Atarot, north of Jerusalem. The assailant was immediately neutralized. Earlier, IDF troops killed a separate assailant who attempted a second car ramming near Hebron. The driver rammed an IDF soldier at a junction near Kiryat Arba and then tried to hit another military unit in the Hebron area. A soldier was lightly wounded before the assailant was shot. In Beirut, Pope Leo continues his mission of peace, addressing thousands at Martyrs Square, just miles from areas hit by recent clashes between Israel and Hezbollah. The first US-born pope, Leo was using his visit to urge Lebanon's fractured communities to reject violence and embrace coexistence, even as the country struggles with economic collapse and the effects of Hezbollah's war with Israel. He met Christian, Sunni, Shiite, and Druze leaders, calling them builders of peace, and warned that fear and prejudice must not be allowed to dominate the region's future. The Pope said peace is still possible and must be pursued. Let's take a listen.
In an age when coexistence can seem like a distant dream, the people of Lebanon, while embracing different religions, stand as a powerful reminder that fear, distrust, and prejudice do not have the final word, and that unity, reconciliation, and peace are possible.
Israel's new state-of-the-art weapon, the Iron Beam laser defense system, is about to go operational, and military officials say it will change everything about air defense. Starting December 30th, it will provide a high-speed, cutting-edge response to drones, rockets, missiles, and mortars. The system has already intercepted dozens of aerial threats during the war, including nearly 40 Hezbollah drones last October. With longer range and the ability to handle simultaneous attacks, Iron Beam is a significant upgrade to the current Iron Dome defense system. And unlike missiles, which cost over $100,000 per interception, firing the laser is as cheap as turning on a light, promising massive savings for Israel. The system will be deployed nationwide, operating alongside Iron Dome commands, striking threats instantly, often before sirens are even needed. This marks the first full-scale operational deployment of a high-energy laser weapon in the world, and it could change the future of air defense globally. That's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. You can scan the QR code on your screen for all the latest updates coming out of Israel. I'm Alec Pollard. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Sivan Raviv, and coming up in today's newscast, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formally requests a presidential pardon to end his corruption trial as President Isaac Herzog begins reviewing the case. A final farewell to hostage Dror Or as he is returned home and laid to rest at Be'eri. And Pope Leo visits Lebanon at a critical moment as the Vatican tries to reposition itself as a mediator in a region on edge. A political and public firestorm has emerged over Prime Minister Netanyahu's request for a presidential pardon to end his corruption trial. Coalition leaders have lined up in support of the Prime Minister's request, but the opposition and democracy watchdogs warn that granting the request without an admission of guilt deals a serious blow to the rule of law. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's pardon request to end his corruption trial has been sent to the Ministry of Justice, which will gather legal opinions before passing them to President Herzog's legal advisor. Netanyahu submitted the request yesterday, citing the national interest and arguing the trial is tearing Israel apart and needs unity. Netanyahu also cited U.S. President Trump's call to end the trial to coordinate on regional strategic issues. Coalition supporters said the pardon is badly needed. Defense Minister Katz said the pardon is essential to heal a decade of national division and allow Netanyahu to focus on Israel's complex security threats. Opposition leaders and democracy watchdogs warned that granting clemency before a verdict without an admission of guilt or political retirement would seriously undermine the rule of law and equality. Opposition leader Lapid said a pardon must include Netanyahu's immediate exit from political life.
אני קורא מפה לנשיא הרצוג. אתה לא יכול לתת לו חנינה בלי הודעה באשמה, הבעת חרטה ופרישה מיידית מהחיים הפוליטיים.
Protesters rallied outside President Herzog's private residence, demonstrating against Prime Minister Netanyahu's request for a pardon in his corruption trial before a verdict is reached.
We're here to demonstrate and tell Buzzi Herzog, the president, that we are aware that he is a weak point in our battle for democracy in Israel. What Netanyahu is asking is not for a pardon. He is asking that his trial will be completely cancelled without taking any responsibility, without paying the price for how he tore up this country and how he eventually brought to the massacre of 7 in October.
President Herzog characterized the request as extraordinary, stating he will consider it seriously and responsibly. As President Herzog weighs his decision, Netanyahu once again stands at the center of a national drama, testing the limits of Israel's democracy and his own extraordinary political endurance.
One of Israel's most sensitive issues is heading towards a collision course, the conscription of ultra-Orthodox Jews into the IDF. As the IDF desperately needs more recruits and Haredi rabbis continue to insist that religious studies are more important than national service, a new bill is being pushed forward to try and reach a compromise. But not everyone is happy about it. Alec Pollard reports from outside the IDF headquarters in Tel Aviv.
Today, the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, holds crucial discussions on a new bill to regulate the conscription of ultra-Orthodox into the IDF, an issue that has long divided Israeli society and threatens Netanyahu's ruling coalition. The legislation would continue to grant military service exemptions to full-time yeshiva students while ostensibly increasing conscription among graduates of Haredi educational institutions. However, the bill is being criticized from both the opposition and members of the ruling coalition. For example, the clause removing sanctions on draft dodgers after age 26 could in practice enable draft evasion rather than prevent it. The High Court is also exerting pressure, last year ruling that decades-long blanket exemptions from Army duty for full-time religious students were illegal. Some 80,000 ultra-Orthodox men aged between 18 and 24 are currently believed to be eligible for military service, but have not enlisted, their absence noticed by the Israeli public more than ever during the war in Gaza. Even after the war, the IDF faces numerous challenges and says it urgently needs 12,000 new recruits to reduce the strain on the standing and reserve soldiers. And at the moment, it seems like the ultra-Orthodox community is the only place from which those recruits will come.
And so, with mounting political and legal pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu, his unprecedented pardon request and a deeply divisive draft exemption bill are now advancing in parallel, raising urgent questions about how he'll keep his coalition stable in the weeks ahead. Joining me now to discuss all of this is former media advisor and chief of staff to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Aviv Bushinsky. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Sivan. Thank you for having me.
So, Netanyahu submits a pardon request. The same week, his coalition pushes a deeply controversial draft exemption bill. How significant is the timing here?
I think that Netanyahu knows that he's like getting back to his back to the wall. I mean, everything is closing on him. He cannot prolong the draft bill as much as he can, and also his trial reaches its peak, and he understands that he has to solve both issues. But I think that Netanyahu, his approach, if I may say, is always to keep the balloon flying around and then to decide which path to take. And it serves in both cases. In the draft law, the bill that they're trying to form, I think that at the end of the day, Netanyahu knows that he'll have to drop it, not only because it will not pass the Supreme Court, because there are no real tangible sanctions, but also because he faces some opposition within his coalition. And as I said, it also applies to his trial. He understands that he has to perhaps either cut losses or find a solution. And when time will come, he'll decide. But now, you know, it's the ball is at Bougie Herzog, the president's court. They'll start negotiating, and then Netanyahu will decide either to take their offer if President Herzog will amend the offer. In other words, ask Netanyahu for some things in return, or he will say that the President Herzog chickened out and decided not to take the offer, and maybe even blame President Herzog to be too much tainted to the left. So as I said, Netanyahu holds all the balloons in the air, and then when time comes, he'll decide what to do.
So President Herzog called the pardon request extraordinary, given that the trial is ongoing with no verdict and no admission of guilt. Is there any realistic path for this request to actually be approved, do you think?
My assumption is that Netanyahu will never admit that he did something wrong. It's against, maybe it's also against his belief. Maybe he didn't do anything wrong, but also he doesn't want to be remembered in the pages of history. And he's very, very concerned in the pages of history that in addition to in the Wikipedia, for instance, in addition to the name Benjamin Netanyahu, the one who served as prime minister more than 5,000 days, he is also admitted to do some, that he breached the law. So I don't see any case that Netanyahu would admit and will take this thing into consideration. The only thing is some kind of an exit strategy that either during this term or the next term, there'll be some kind of a termination in his prolonged service as a prime minister. This is the only solution that I can see, and I will not rule it out that Netanyahu sees that maybe he achieved the most he can do regarding the war in Gaza, Hezbollah, Iran, and the Abraham Accord are not going so positive as he expected. So maybe it's a way to fade out and not having being as a convicted and tainted with his name regarding the things that he's being accused.
And those are certainly a lot of things to have on his plate. But one final question. To what extent do you think President Trump is influencing this move with the pardon?
I think that it's not significant at all. I think that the country is torn apart a lot because of what Netanyahu is trying to do, and he blames the judicial system. He blames the prosecution that these allegations are false and artificial. I think that it's more to Netanyahu to decide how to address the issue. What Trump did, even though, from my understanding, it was under Netanyahu's request, it's insignificant. President Herzog will have to decide, and I don't see him decide just to terminate the trial with not forcing Netanyahu to take any act regarding this issue. I don't see it happens, and it has nothing to do with President Trump.
Aviv Bushinsky, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
It's day 787 of the war in Gaza. The ceasefire is generally holding, but local clashes continue. The IDF confirms that the commander of Hamas's East Rafah battalion, his deputy, and 2 other operatives were killed yesterday after they tried to escape a tunnel complex in eastern Rafah, an area under full IDF control where dozens of Hamas fighters remain trapped underground. The 4 were spotted emerging from the tunnel and were killed by IDF troops and Air Force strikes. The army says more than 30 terror operatives have been killed in recent weeks as they attempted to flee, with another 8 captured. Hamas sources estimate 60 to 80 fighters are still holed up below the city. The army says that ground and Air Force strikes eliminated the battalion commander, his deputy, a company commander, and another operative identified as the son of senior Hamas official Ghazi Hamad. Israel refuses any deal that allows the fighters free passage and continues to demand Hamas disarm, a core element of President Trump's 20-point Gaza plan. The IDF believes the remaining operatives are running out of food and supplies and may be starving underground. The body of returned hostage Dror Or was finally laid to rest today at Kibbutz Be'eri. He was buried alongside his wife Yonat, who was also murdered on October 7th. Family, friends, and community members gathered for an emotional farewell as his sons Yali and Noam and his brother Elad recited the mourner's Kaddish. Dror Or was long thought to be a living hostage until intelligence revealed he had been killed on October 7th and his body was taken into Gaza. Elad Or, a central figure in the hostage families forum, delivered a heartbreaking eulogy, speaking of their 38 years together and calling for leadership that will ensure such a tragedy never happens again. Dror's body was returned to Israel last week after being transferred from Hamas to the Red Cross in Gaza. Dror's parents, Yuval and Dorit, shared memories of his childhood, his love of basketball, and his life with Yonat, describing them as people of freedom and light. The family vows to continue the struggle for accountability and for the return of the remains of 2 hostages still held in Gaza. In a rare visit, Pope Leo XIV has arrived in Lebanon, stepping into a country struggling under economic collapse, political paralysis, and escalating tensions along its border with Israel.
The first U.S.-born pope was greeted at Beirut's International Airport by President Joseph Aoun, religious leaders, and large crowds. From his plane, Pope Leo had already set the tone of his trip, calling for a return to dialogue in a region he said cannot endure another generation of war. Arriving at the presidential palace, he was met again by Lebanon's president, who used his remarks to express national resilience in the face of crisis. The Pope directly addressed the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, using his largest platform in Lebanon to reiterate the Vatican's long-standing position. He warned that the region is approaching a breaking point.
La Santa Sede già da diversi anni pubblicamente appoggia la proposta di una soluzione di 2 Stati. Sappiamo tutti che in questo momento ancora Israele non accetta quella soluzione, ma lo vediamo come l'unica soluzione che potrebbe offrire una, una soluzione al conflitto che continuamente vivono. Noi siamo anche amici di Israele e cerchiamo, diciamo, con le due parti a essere, diciamo, una voce mediatrice che possa aiutare a avvicinarci a una soluzione con giustizia per tutti.
Lebanon, home to the region's largest Christian community, has been shaken by months of Hezbollah attacks on Israel and the failing promise to disarm the group under the ceasefire terms. Israel's responses have brought numerous strikes on Hezbollah targets, and fears in Beirut are growing of a wider escalation. Lebanese leaders now hope the Pope's visit will draw international pressure back to their side. And while Lebanon awaits, Pope Leo ended his address with a call to both Christians and Muslims to work together, warning that peace will only come through joint responsibility. He also called on the international community not to abandon Lebanon.
A new nationwide survey shows a shift inside Israel's high-tech sector. Nearly every employee is now using artificial intelligence tools as part of routine work. And as adoption accelerates, experts warn the transformation is already reshaping jobs, skills, and the future of Israel's tech workforce. More on this from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
A survey released this week by the Israel Innovation Authority and the Brookdale Institute reveals that 95% of high-tech employees now use AI tools regularly, and 78% of them use them every single day. What began with developers has quickly spread across marketing teams, HR departments, and product managers, embedding AI deep inside daily workflows. The report's message is clear. Artificial intelligence isn't a prediction. It's a labor market revolution, already unfolding in real time. Innovation Authority CEO Dror Bin underscored the significance, saying the findings show that this is not a future projection, but a present reality shaping high-tech employment. According to the survey, employees use AI not for a single need, but across a wide range of tasks, from code generation to professional writing, research, and self-learning. In fact, 82% of daily users rely on AI for 3 or more tasks. The benefits are dramatic. 70% of employees report substantial improvement in output quality. Half say AI significantly reduces work time. And 40% report cutting more than half their performance time. Still, the transformation brings new concerns. Senior employees report higher anxiety about job security, and workers in Israel's periphery express more fear of being left behind. The survey signals a sector moving fast, creating new opportunities while widening existing gaps. And as AI becomes a permanent layer of Israel's high-tech ecosystem, the question now is whether industry and government can ensure that every worker shares in the benefits of this transformation.
Nearly 50 years after the death of Nazi doctor Joseph Mengele, the Argentinian president has authorized the publication of documents confirming that the Argentinian authorities knew of Mengele's presence in the South American country. ILTV's Devo Klein has the story.
The Argentinian government has just released new documentation revealing that Argentinian authorities knew of the presence of a notorious Nazi in their country. Dr. Joseph Mengele fled Germany as World War II came to a close, knowing that the world would be knocking on his door. According to the new information, Mengele entered South America in 1949 with a fake Italian passport, going by a fake name Helmut Gregor. There, he led a relatively calm and unbothered life. But working for the SS and Nazi regime was nothing but calm. Nicknamed the Angel of Death, Mengele was known for brutal, inhumane, and torturous experiments conducted on Jewish prisoners in Auschwitz. An analysis of the newly released documents by Fox News shows that Argentina was fully aware that Mengele was in their country. Mengele felt so comfortable in Argentina that in 1956, he began to use his real name. He asked for his original birth certificate from the West German embassy in Buenos Aires and requested his ID cards be remade as such. But by the time the request memo had reached the relevant authorities, Mengele had fled to Paraguay after international pressure increased on Argentina to extradite him following a request by West Germany. In 1960, he arrived in Brazil, where he later drowned and died in 1979, avoiding the trial and punishment he deserved and dodging what others like Eichmann had to endure, facing the Jewish state in a Jewish court.
United Hatzalah, Israel's all-volunteer emergency response organization, is preparing for its Miami Gala coming up on December 17th. This year's event honors former Mossad Director Yossi Cohen, former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Nova Festival survivor Bar Cooperstein. Joining us now is United Hatzalah founder Eli Beer. Thanks for joining, Eli.
Thanks for having me.
So, Eli, why were Yossi Cohen, Mike Pompeo, and Bar Cooperstein chosen as this year's honorees?
Well, we have a few more honorees, but they are one segment of hero honorees, people who devoted their life to protect others. And I'll explain. Yossi Cohen, we all remember one of the things he did. We all remember the pager operation that was started years before it actually happened. It actually started in the days. It started in the days that Yossi Cohen was the head of Mossad. Yossi Cohen devoted his life for the security of Israel. Many of the things that he did is never going to be exposed. And one day we'll hear about them, maybe in the future, maybe very soon. We'll hear of them in different parts of the world. He protected not only Israel, he protected Jewish communities around the world. Yes, Jewish communities in Australia, in Brazil, in Mexico. And Mike Pompeo, who I love and I'm friendly with many years, him and his wife Susan are real lovers of Israel. The essence of Judaism is recognizing the good, hakarat hatov. Mike Pompeo did so much, of course, for America, but he did so much for Israel. He put his life for many, many years as the head of the CIA, the head of the State Department, put his life to make sure that also Israel is protected. Not only the United States is protected. It's still on the top of his mind. So I think recognizing these two heroes, Yossi Cohen and Mike Pompeo, who worked together, by the way, best friends for many, many years, and they still are best friends, together with a young boy, Bar Cooperstein.
Who was a former hostage.
Former hostage, but people only think of former hostage. He is a total hero, like a real true hero. On October 7th, he was there to protect people. He was there as a security guard. He was there as an EMT. His father, who I know for many years, Tala, was a volunteer of United Hatzalah. And 5 years ago, he was driving an ambucycle to save a 4-year-old child who was not breathing. And while he was driving to save this little girl who was not breathing, running to save her life, someone crashed into his ambucycle, the United Hatzalah ambucycle, and he was left paralyzed for the rest of his life. He cannot walk, he cannot talk.
Wow.
And the day of October 7th, when his son was actually in the Nova Festival saving lives, he did not run away. He stayed there. He was protecting people. He rescued people. He hit people. And then he was in the Hamas for hours. Eventually, he was caught by the Hamas and he was tortured for 738 days. So he, together with his two other heroes, are going to be honored in our gala. And I think it's going to be incredible, hakarat hatov, recognizing the good to all three of them.
Now, you're launching a major mass casualty incident training campaign. Why now, and what are the goals of this campaign?
Well, if you think about what Bar Cooperstein actually did on October 7th in the Nova Festival, he had to decide. He was one of the only EMTs there. He had to decide between hundreds of people. Who do you treat first? Who do you treat? The one who's yelling the most, or the one who has the most blood, the one who's not yelling, the one who's unconscious? We as EMTs, as paramedics, and even doctors, we need training for triage. God forbid another event like this happens, or it could be a natural disaster. It could be an earthquake. It could be a lot of different fires or many other things where people injured. We had the Meron tragedy. All these terrible incidents, you need to have training for the volunteers. We took upon ourselves that 2026 will be the year of training for mass casualty incidents. Every volunteer of ours should know what to do when he has 100 injured people in front of him. And he should know, or she should know, that who you run first, not the one who's yelling first, not the one who's that. You should know what to do. It's a very complex training. And it's not only theory, it's also actually giving them the feeling. We're going to put them in places where they have people screaming and yelling and smell of flesh and fire and noises of bombs. And that's where they're going to have the environment of training. And I think that's going to benefit Israel tremendously.
Sounds really tough, but super important, and so is your work. Eli Beer, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 13 degrees Celsius or 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 22 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap of today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel, and you can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for watching.
Like, give us a little personal history so we know you.
Sure. We went on a date in her kitchen, and I proposed after 45 minutes of our first date. I knew about her because she was my roommate's sister. I was 19. I had just turned 19.
And she?
She had just turned 17.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a weird story, but she had just come, she was in 12th grade. She had just begun 12th grade. So she didn't even get changed for our date. She was just in her, Jewish school uniform.
Welcome to the Jewish Matchmaker podcast on ILTV. I'm Aliza Ben Shalom, and I am your host. And today I am honored to introduce a true pioneer in the digital community building space. Rabbi Ben-Zion Klatzko, the founder of Shabbat.com, launched in 2010 his platform, which has grown to be the largest Jewish social network, spanning over 100,000 members, facilitating Shabbat hosting and meals, and even creating matches that have led to marriages. Today we're going to dive deep into who he is, the vision behind everything that he is doing. And you must know he is into music and art. He has the largest museum of Jewish art. Rabbi Klatzko, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here and for being willing to share your story. You, to me, are, people are like, oh, they're a legend. You say to somebody like, oh, you know what, Rabbi Klatzko? They're like, of course I know of him. I'm like, no, I know him. I know him. We have come to you for Shabbat throughout the years and visited. Your home is an open, warm place where I don't know how you do it. You have over 100 guests on a weekly basis to multiple meals and people sleeping everywhere. My husband and I actually joked that everybody was everywhere, even a guy on the couch with the drapes as his blanket because there were so many people. People are so drawn to you and so attracted to you. What is it about you, your family, your community that you bring that is such a light? What music, art, what is it?
I want to be really cliche. First of all, knowing you is knowing a legend as well, and I name drop your name when I speak to my students. Like, and I know Lisa Ben Shalom. They're like, really? Can you introduce us? So they get really excited. I think this is something you and I share, and you've been to my house and I've been to your house, even when you were back in Philly. And the word that I think is the catalyst for my work as well as yours is love. And I know, as a matchmaker, you want love to be a big part of it. But really, matchmaking is just an offshoot of the love that we have to people. And the larger our hearts are when it comes to other people, the less judgmental we'll be and the more we'll see the beauty in people. So the Torah on one foot is love your neighbor like you love yourself. And we really love ourselves. So open our eyes, just love everyone.
I think it's so true. There's a friend that I have, and he said, well, what could I do to be a little bit more warm? I said, you have to love everybody. And he said, but I don't. I'm very critical. I said, that's the problem. That's it. So I think you got directly to the root of it. I want to dig into something very different that you're recently involved with, which is bridge building between the Jewish and Christian coalition. What is this? What are you getting involved in, and what's starting to happening? I'm hearing a buzz.
So it started, I was doing a Havdalah in the Old City, and someone had mentioned to a well-known bishop, Bishop Spears, who was visiting the Kotel, that there's a rabbi doing a Havdalah, maybe you want to experience that. And he came up, and we had a lot of students, and it was a musical event, and he and his kids, who are actually halachically Jewish, their mother is Jewish, and he was just like really taken by the whole event, and he asked if I could be on his podcast. So it was the rabbi and the bishop. It was really cute. And then he said, let's do something, this is after October 7th, let's do something in Washington, D.C., where we could advocate for Israel and the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism was rising. So we went. I went there together with about 70 people, and I ended up being the representative rabbi, going into Mark Rubio and other well-known figures within Congress, and speaking on behalf of the Jewish people. And then that repeated itself this year, and this year had grown from 70 to nearly 1,000. So it was really, really large. Wow. And we went all around Congress speaking and advocating. And then we decided, let's create this bridge between those who are monotheistic, who believe in the Creator, who believe in biblical morality, that kind of a concept. And let's make sure that we stay together during these very difficult times. So we do Shabbat events, and I'm able to guide those who are from different faiths in what we have in common and where our moral basis comes from, which is the Torah. So this is something that I've been able to do, and it's certainly growing, and there's a lot of desire on the part of the Christian clergy to learn a little bit more about Judaism. We had a fellow by the name of Frank Pesci who came to our home, and he's a very influential person, and he was so blown away by what a Shabbat actually is, because he had heard about Judaism, and he reads the Torah, and he's a supporter of Israel, but he never saw a religious Shabbat. And he was blown away, and he says, can I come back? And he flew in from North Carolina, and he brought someone else. And now I'm doing my third Shabbat with him. And he actually wants to spend a little time in a Jewish yeshiva to learn more. Like, the whole thing is surreal how Jews and Christians are able to find common ground when it comes to the love of God and love of Israel.
It's really a beautiful match. This podcast is all about matchmaking and bringing the right people together, and to have faith-based people come together for a common purpose to serve and to do the greater good and God's will is absolutely tremendous. And what an outstanding match. I'm really looking forward to hearing more, but even more so, I'd like to be involved with whatever is happening. So please keep me in mind.
Absolutely.
In terms of massive changes and platforms and connections, you started Shabbat.com. Where did this dream come from, and how did it turn into this? It's like its own life force. How did that happen?
So once again, being in the right place, the right time in history really, really helps. My wife comes from a family that had a lot of guests for Shabbat. Many. They had a very long table. And I also came from the same kind of family. I grew up in Cleveland. Very, very large table, many guests from all walks of life. And because we both had that experience and we saw a need, we began inviting a lot of guests. So we, started at 30, 40, 50, 60. And I think our biggest Shabbat had about 220 people. We ended up having to rent a tent and put in our backyard. And after having a lot of people, there was a week that we weren't able to host. We were going away, and a lot of people said, but what are we going to do? And I thought, wow, so many people would love to host. They just don't know that you're looking, and you don't know how to find them. So we created this Shabbat.com, and we're now in in, I think, 234 countries.
Wow.
And we've facilitated over 2 million people finding place for Shabbat since 2010.
You are the largest Shabbat matchmaker in the world. You bring guests and hosts together and help them to find each other and just connect.
I love Shabbat. I don't know what I would do without Shabbat. It's my date with Hashem. I feel like I'm dating Hashem. As a matter of fact, the whole Shabbat is a date. Like I picture, like, here I am, I'm getting ready. So I take a shower, like you do on a date, shave, I set the
nice
table,
clothes on.
nice clothes, white tablecloth, I light some candles, I pour some wine, buy some flowers, like, goodness gracious. And then I sing the first song, Boi Chalab, come my bride, come my bride. The whole thing is built like a date. Shabbat HaMalkah, she's my queen, my date, my lover. And so I love Shabbat, and it's just a great time to find a date on Shabbat. So the whole thing works out really well.
So speaking of finding a date on Shabbat, you now have dating as an option on Shabbat.com. So, and I know you didn't originally have that because I was on the site way back when. We've had some Shabbat.com guests that I'm still actually in touch with who visited us. And then I saw dating started to develop and I'm like, there's singles on here. What's going on? How did that come about?
So there were 2 points in having the dating. Number one, because on Shabbat there is a mitzvah to find a date. L'shadech habanot, we say in the Shabbos Miros, in the Shabbos Mirot, when we sing, we say hirhurim mutarim. It is okay to have all sorts of wonderful thoughts. L'shadech habanot, and to make shidduchim on Shabbat. So we thought, wow, if there are going to be a lot of guests, well, they should get to know each other. What a great way to do it. Eating challah, you're in a good mood, chicken soup, you're making l'chaim. Like, things are very mellow. It's just a very mellow.
You're looking good. You're feeling
good. Yeah, you're looking great. It's just, it's a perfect time. So, and then of course, it was another reason to come onto Shabbat.com because, hey, I'll find somebody to date, and once I'm there, maybe I'll find a guest to invite, or maybe I'll get invited. So, one thing fed into the other.
So I actually know a couple who met on Shabbat.com. We heard the whole story. I was like, you have to come visit me. I want to meet her. I want to see the story. And they were so grateful and so happy. And of course, now they have their own home and now they're hosting people as well. So it's a cycle of giving. It's really
Two of my
incredible.
kids met their spouses on Shabbat.com. So I've got
self-serving also.
I've got 4 grandchildren from Shabbat. So even if no one gained anything, I gained 4 beautiful grandchildren. So thank God.
Shifting into another realm, because you really do so many things. As an educator and a campus rabbi, you also run these Akiva trips to Israel for students and young adults. Can you tell us more about these programs, and what are you hoping that these young adults are going to walk away with?
So it's a really great question. My last trip happened during the war with Iran, the 12-day war.
Wow.
And we actually had somebody filming the entire trip because we wanted to do something with it. We wanted to take somebody through the journey of a student coming to Israel. Little did we know that 3 days into the trip, the bombs would be falling. So now it's become a really interesting little show we're going to be putting out. But the real point of filming it was to show that if you take a student who may be disaffected and they're in Harvard or they're in Columbia or in University of Florida and they don't know much about their Judaism, but you bring them to the Holy Land and you introduce them to holiness, it's going to affect them in a way that no lecture will. And that's the experience of the Akiva trip. So I started the Akiva trip. I'm going to be doing my 83rd trip. So I've done many trips. And when I started, it was students who were disaffected. Now we have so many applicants who are interested that we try to find not just students who want to learn about Judaism, but we're looking for the next leaders. Ben Shapiro was one of my students early on. Josh Hammer was on my trip today. He's a big figure in the RNC, and many others who are today prominent members of the Jewish community got their start on this trip. So we figured I'll make it very inexpensive. It's not free, but it's $299, which is
practically free for a trip to Israel.
15 days.
And what ages?
And this is age 18 to 30.
Okay.
And even if you've been on Birthright, I'll take you.
And USA based only, Europe, where do you take people from?
Primarily, I would take from North America, but I have taken from other countries. If somebody is really awesome, I'll let them come on board. And I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for people with sterling character. We do character references because we really want we don't want to just throw a group of college students together because, the whole drinking and hooking up culture is not it's not a fertile ground for growth. But if you take somebody who has good character and they'll be respectful and they'll really come to the lectures and they'll ask good questions and they'll treat each other nicely, right. So then they can learn a lot about Judaism because Judaism speaks to character. And then the second thing is we're looking for somebody who says, look, I grew up with a certain amount of Jewish knowledge, but I really want to upgrade. I want to know a little more history. I want to know a little more Hebrew. And I may want to find a Jewish wife or a Jewish husband.
That's what I was going to ask about next. So do you see our people meeting? And because it's such fertile ground for growth and for knowledge, and like you said, this isn't about temporary hookup culture or something that's just very vain. Do you see that the matches that are happening, like, do we have stories of successes? What can you share?
Every trip, every single trip. And the thing I could share most recently is that this past Thursday, my son got married to someone from the trip. They met on the trip. So I feel like everything I do for myself. That's the way Hashem makes it. And I think you were there. You were at the wedding.
Right. By the way, massive mazel tov to your son, Azariah and Jasmine, who had the most gorgeous wedding in Zichron Yaakov. Actually, I think the place is for rent. It is a massive grounds massive for Israel. I'm not talking about America. To be able to host a wedding, a simcha, you could literally do anything with places to sleep also. Right. It was stunning. It was so, so beautiful. And you invited our whole family to come, which is a very rare thing. There's 7 of us. And my 2 soldier children were home, and they were able to join us. And everybody said how inspiring it was, how beautiful it was. And our one son that does parkour and does flips, your son missed my son doing the flip. He goes, you got to do it again. So he did it again. You have to bring joy to a bride and to a groom.
We're very fortunate. And the bride was on the trip. And she actually grew up Mormon. And her mother was Jewish, her father was Mormon. And she learned about Judaism on the trip. And as she went to study in a Jewish madrasha, a seminary. And my son, who grew up more religious, my son said, she continues to grow. Her character is so sterling. Would you give me your blessing? And I said, oh, absolutely. What a gem. What a great match. And the last night of Sheva Brachot, which explained, so it's like the 7 days of partying after the wedding, is today. The last night, and today's officially the last day of the celebration. And that was through the trip. But really, every single trip, we've had at least one match.
Wow.
So, and on Shabbat.com, we've had over 300 matches. So
that's phenomenal. Those are outstanding numbers, and I think that if you're between 18 and 30 and you want to get to Israel, you should check out Akiva Trips because if it's good for matchmaking by me, the rest of it is good also. But if we can find your person and inspire you to live and love your Judaism, I don't think that there's anything better than that. I think that you've set up really a phenomenal way for people, young people, to be educated and connect. And thank you.
Can I give the website?
People. Yes, please.
Yeah, akivatrip.com. It's that easy, akivatrip.com. It is first come, first serve. and come with a great attitude, come wanting to learn and grow, and with your antennas up.
Can you tell us personally, how long have you been married, and tell us about your family and a little music? Like, give us a little personal history so we know you.
Sure. Born in Cincinnati, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I met my wife. We went on a date in her kitchen, and I proposed after 45 minutes of our first date.
Who set this up? This was like an arranged type thing,
mom,
families? Her mom and?
Our mom and me. I knew about her because she was my roommate's sister. So I came and she said, "You're dating yet?" I said, yeah, I'm ready to start. She said, "Well, you want to meet my daughter?"
Wait, how old were you?
I was 19. I had just turned 19.
And she?
She had just turned 17.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a weird story, but she had just come, she was in 12th grade. She had just begun 12th grade. So she didn't even get changed for our date. She was just in her, Jewish school uniform, and there I was. I wasn't changed either, and we sat in the kitchen, and after 45 minutes, I just said, "You want to do this? Because you're the one for me." And she said, "Yeah, I want to." And that was it. And I called my dad and I said, "Guess what? I'm engaged." And he said, "Guess what? No, you're not." And we got the little fight on the phone. But in the end, he met her and loved her.
Okay, so you literally got engaged on your first date after 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And how soon after did you get married?
So then her rabbis wanted her to wait until she graduated 12th grade.
Right?
Right?
Makes a little bit of sense, maybe.
They wanted her to be 18.
Okay.
So I said, 18, but not 18 in a day, 18. So we got married on her 18th birthday.
Wow.
So the moment we were able to, we got married, and that was 1988. So we're married now 37 years, and we have 11 children, thank God, 23 grandchildren.
Wow.
Bezrat Hashem, many more to come. And we thank God every day for all of our blessings.
Can you give us one piece of, or many pieces of, marriage advice and wisdom? What have you learned over these 37 years? And what are some of the things that we need to be prepared for? We're married 22 years, thank God, coming up on our 23rd wedding anniversary. And I feel like we've learned a lot, but every stage is different, and especially almost approaching 40 years together and being together at such a young age, you must have so much to offer. Tell us a few key things that people need to know about marriage.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I made plenty of mistakes in the beginning, and you're going to as well. If you're just getting married, you're going to make mistakes, and so will he or she. And you got to be forgiving of those mistakes, because nothing can prepare you for marriage. There's no relationship that you have that is like marriage.
Yeah.
One of my children came to me and he said, "I didn't know marriage was so hard." So after a few months of marriage, and I said, "Yeah, it is." And he's a great husband. She's a great wife, but he wanted the acknowledgement. It's hard. Every day, every hour, there can be misunderstandings and hurt feelings, and it's difficult to navigate. It's rewarding but difficult.
Right.
But I will tell you what I tell my children. I sit down with them when they're engaged. I take them out to eat, and I give them my fatherly wisdom.
Oh.
And one thing that I always tell them, it's this. I said, "You're going to love this person, and they're going to love you. But love is not 24/7. We don't always feel in love, and it's unrealistic to believe you're always going to feel that way. It actually would be a little bit of a frantic lifestyle. It'd be overstimulating. I love you. Love is not 24/7. You're not always going to feel it. Sometimes you'll be upset. You'll be annoyed. You'll be angry. But do you know what is 24/7? Mercy. Mm-hmm. Mercy has to be 24/7. You can never let your guard down from having mercy on the person who trusted you with their emotions and their feelings. And you can't say things that are hurtful. And you can't throw back in their face something that they confided in you. Love may not be 24/7, but mercy always has to be.
Wow.
So you can't lose that. So I tell
Wow.
my children.
Deep, deep wisdom. Is there any Torah wisdom about love or relationships that you particularly connect to, or it's one of those things you always say or you always talk about? Is there something that you can share and just elevate our souls?
There's so much. I love Hashem. I love Torah. I love mitzvot. It's my life. I'll tell you, if I have one chance to speak with somebody and advocate for Judaism, I tell them the following. Judaism is not a religion. Judaism is a relationship. It's built like a relationship. It's mentioned in the Torah as a relationship over 500 times. Over 500 times. It uses relationship terms with Judaism. It never uses religion. Never in the entire Torah. In all the books of the Torah, it's called a religion. One time, by the enemy of the Jews that wanted us killed, his name was Haman, and he said, don't worry about killing the Jews. The Dasehem Shonos, they're just a different religion. But he was wrong. We are not. We're a relationship. We're built like a relationship, and we function like a relationship. And when we understand this, everything morphs, everything changes. I'll give you just a few points how it changes. For example, people often practice religion out of guilt. Do you want to be in a relationship out of guilt? Right. Do you want, I don't love you, but I pity you, or I feel guilty, so I'm going to be with you. It's a whole different dynamic. In religion, I see if it speaks to me. If it does, yeah. If not, not. If I can get away with what I can get away with, and I check the boxes, and I go to my services, and then I'm home, then I did my duty. In a relationship, I always want to go the extra mile. If my wife says, can you pick up pizza? I can pick up a slice of pizza for her. But if I love her, I'm going to say, what do you want with it? Do you want peppers on top? Do you want a milkshake? Do you want a sushi? And if I really love her, I'll know the answer to that question because I've done it before. Judaism as a relationship speaks to our heart. Judaism as a religion does not speak to us. And I think we've lost so many Jews throughout history and on college campuses, which is where I work, because people have had religion shoved down their throat, and we are not hardwired for religion. We're hardwired not to be told what to do, but actually from our very childhood, we're hardwired to cherish relationships. So that's my piece of wisdom. Not religion, relationship. Shema Yisrael ve'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha. We say it at least twice a day. I love you, Hashem, madly in love with the one above. Ahava.
Oh, I love that. I'm madly in love with the one above. I love rhymes, so that at the core of it, that really sticks with me. When you think about your legacy, what impact do you most hope to leave? Right after 120 years, you're moving on. What's that mark that you want to leave here?
Wow. The older you get, the more you think about it.
I know, I'm getting there.
You know, the hairline, well, God willing, you'll live for many years. The hairline goes and the wrinkles come. And you know, you really do think about these things. Like, what am I leaving? And the first thing is I want to leave a legacy of being an amazing husband, a great father, a great grandfather, a great friend. So I know that's not very global, but if I'm global, but my family doesn't feel like I was there for them, then I'm a failure. So that's number one. But if I think about, like, what do I want to give the Jewish people, what my legacy should be, it's that Judaism is accessible and wonderful and awesome, and it comes in different stripes and different colors and different shapes and different flavors. And as long as we understand that together with halacha means the way, or if you want to, in my terms, halacha is God's love language. It's like Hashem says, yes, love me, but Shabbat is how you love me, because that's my love language, right? Tefillin, that's the locket of love, like tell me. But within halacha, there are so many flavors, and there's a way of actualizing yourself. So people say to me, what kind of a Jew are you? So I tell them, actually, I'm an Essa Jew. They say, what's an Essa Jew? Is that Reform? Is it Orthodox? I said, no, I made it up, but I'm going to spread it one day. So maybe through wine. What's Essa? So the word Essa means to lift up. Like Essa, Einai El Harim, lift up. And Essa is spelled Aleph, Sin, Aleph. Aleph, Sin, Aleph. So to me, Essa stands for Emet, truth. And I look at that's the Litvak in me, the Lithuanian in me, the Yeshiva person. Truth. Simcha, that's the Chassid in me. I come from a Chassidic dynasty. So truth, happiness. The last Aleph is Ahava, love, Kalvach, right? So truth, happiness, and love. I'm an Essa Jew. Truth, happiness, love. You squish that together, and then no one cares. Am I wearing a suit, wearing a red tie, a blue tie, no collar? Doesn't make a difference. God is so big. He doesn't care about that stuff. He wants us to love him in the most infinite way, and he'll love us back in ways we can't imagine, in ways that we're gonna witness and see it and say, wow, Hashem, I don't know what I would do without you. I just can't express. You know, we say, if my mouth were as wide as the ocean and my praise would come out like the waves that are uncountable, it would not be sufficient to explain the infinity of my love towards you.
Beautiful. How can people find you online? How can they reach out?
I'm going to give my phone number. I give my phone number to everyone. People say, you can't put your phone number online.
I'm in shock. I'm like, don't share my number. Don't share my number.
But what is a rabbi for? If no one can reach a rabbi.
Share your number.
212 Shabbat.
Of course, that's your number.
212 Shabbat. You leave me WhatsApp is the way. Don't
WhatsApp.
Call me.
Okay.
You leave me a WhatsApp, and I really try to get back to people. And I like connecting. I like helping. I like projects. But if you just need somebody to be a good listener, I try to be that person also.
Spectacular. Rabbi Klatsku, this conversation was enlightening and inspiring and truly, truly hit my heart.
Thank you.
I feel very grateful that you took time away from your family to be with us on your short trip here and to share your wisdom and spread your light.
Thank you, Eliza.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on the Jewish Matchmaking Podcast. I'm your host, Eliza Ben Shalom from ILTV. And until next time, remember that matches make families, families make communities, and communities change the world.
Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Alec Pollard, coming to you live from Israel with the top stories in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit the White House in the near future. The two leaders spoke by phone and discussed the importance of and commitment to dismantling Hamas's military capabilities and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, as well as efforts to expand regional peace accords. If confirmed, the trip would mark Netanyahu's fifth White House visit since Trump returned to office in January. The call comes after Trump warned Israel not to destabilize Syria or its new leadership, days after IDF soldiers clashed with gunmen in southern Syria. Trump posted to his Truth Social account, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." Trump added that he is very satisfied with Syria's performance under its new president, Ahmad al-Shara, a former commander in the al-Qaeda terror group who made a historic White House visit in November. The IDF says it has eliminated a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in a targeted strike in Gaza against multiple terror targets and commanders across the Strip. Ala al-Din Abed el-Nasser Hassan Kudari, a Nukhba commander in the Islamic Jihad Gaza City Brigade, was killed in the operation, which the IDF says is a retaliation to Hamas's violations of the ceasefire in November. Khudari infiltrated kibbutz Nachal Oz during the October 7th massacre and continued to direct attacks on Israeli troops and civilians throughout the war. Nachal Oz was among the community's hardest hit, with dozens killed, wounded, and abducted. In further security news, 2 young Israelis were lightly wounded in a suspected stabbing attack near the Jewish community of Atarot, north of Jerusalem. The assailant was immediately neutralized. Earlier, IDF troops killed a separate assailant who attempted a second car ramming near Hebron. The driver rammed an IDF soldier at a junction near Kiryat Arba and then tried to hit another military unit in the Hebron area. A soldier was lightly wounded before the assailant was shot. In Beirut, Pope Leo continues his mission of peace, addressing thousands at Martyrs Square, just miles from areas hit by recent clashes between Israel and Hezbollah. The first US-born pope, Leo was using his visit to urge Lebanon's fractured communities to reject violence and embrace coexistence, even as the country struggles with economic collapse and the effects of Hezbollah's war with Israel. He met Christian, Sunni, Shiite, and Druze leaders, calling them builders of peace, and warned that fear and prejudice must not be allowed to dominate the region's future. The Pope said peace is still possible and must be pursued. Let's take a listen.
In an age when coexistence can seem like a distant dream, the people of Lebanon, while embracing different religions, stand as a powerful reminder that fear, distrust, and prejudice do not have the final word, and that unity, reconciliation, and peace are possible.
Israel's new state-of-the-art weapon, the Iron Beam laser defense system, is about to go operational, and military officials say it will change everything about air defense. Starting December 30th, it will provide a high-speed, cutting-edge response to drones, rockets, missiles, and mortars. The system has already intercepted dozens of aerial threats during the war, including nearly 40 Hezbollah drones last October. With longer range and the ability to handle simultaneous attacks, Iron Beam is a significant upgrade to the current Iron Dome defense system. And unlike missiles, which cost over $100,000 per interception, firing the laser is as cheap as turning on a light, promising massive savings for Israel. The system will be deployed nationwide, operating alongside Iron Dome commands, striking threats instantly, often before sirens are even needed. This marks the first full-scale operational deployment of a high-energy laser weapon in the world, and it could change the future of air defense globally. That's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. You can scan the QR code on your screen for all the latest updates coming out of Israel. I'm Alec Pollard. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Axis of Truth on JNS. I'm Emily Schrader, and this week we're taking a look at the bad faith attacks on Christian Zionists, which were spearheaded by folks like Tucker Carlson. We'll speak to Sandra Hagee Parker, the chairwoman of Christians United for Israel Action Fund, to explore the theological basis for Christian Zionism, plus a deep dive into how the Islamic Republic of Iran continues to evade sanctions, even while the country is seemingly collapsing internally. First, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Gaza Strip. A supposed ceasefire may be in effect, even though Hamas is currently in violation of it for many weeks, given they're still holding 3 hostage bodies. But the U.S. administration isn't letting that stop them from pushing forward with a proposal for later stages of this same agreement. This new international plan being pushed at the UN by the United States to govern the Gaza Strip, it would create a transnational authority that would control security, administration, and borders in the Gaza Strip. Now, already Russia has put forward its own version, endorsing Palestinian statehood, and both superpowers are trying to shape the future of Gaza from thousands of miles away. The idea that they're selling is simple: put Gaza under international control, bring in neutral security forces, remove Hamas from power, hold elections, and create a path to stability. But what they're proposing is not just unrealistic, it's dangerous, and it's been done before. Every time the West has attempted to engineer governance in highly radicalized or internally divided societies, it has failed. We've seen this again and again. The United States forced elections in Gaza previously, and Hamas won in a landslide. Then they carried out a violent coup against Fatah. In Lebanon, UNIFIL was supposed to disarm Hezbollah, with millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars being poured into international force, but Hezbollah is now more powerful than the Lebanese army. Iraq, after the United States invasion, descended into sectarian war and eventually gave rise to ISIS. Libya collapsed into chaos and militia rule after the NATO intervention. Afghanistan received 20 years of Western nation building and fell back into Taliban control the moment the United States left. The lesson is consistent. When the West imposes its own models on societies that are deeply tribal, religiously motivated, and politically fractured, the project collapses and leaves a bigger crisis behind. Now, skeptics may look at West Germany or Japan after World War II as examples of successful foreign-guided transitions, but these cases are not remotely comparable to Gaza or the Arab world. Both countries were already coherent nation states. They had functioning civil infrastructure, they weren't divided by clan-based or sectarian factions, and most importantly, they were not ruled by a radical Islamic theocracy or exposed to transnational jihadist ideology. None of the conditions that made Germany and Japan successful are present in Gaza today. And this brings us to a central problem. There is no real evidence that this international plan could successfully remove Hamas from power or disarm them. Not one country involved in this plan has explained how they would physically disarm a terror army that has spent years building bunkers, weapon stockpiles, and underground cities. And history shows why these promises should not be believed. United Nations Resolution 1559 ordered Hezbollah to disarm. It never happened. United Nations Resolution 1701 reiterated it years later. Never happened. Hezbollah only grew stronger. There's no reason to believe that Gaza would be any different. In fact, this plan sends the exact opposite message. It tells Palestinians that October 7th, which was not about statehood, but about erasing Israel, has resulted in international pressure for a new political process. That signal rewards terrorism and teaches that extreme violence leads to political gains. It undermines the few remaining moderates in Palestinian society and further destroys the authority of the Palestinian Authority. And let's not ignore the core of the conflict, Palestinian rejectionism. Every major plan for peace or statehood since 1937 has been rejected by Palestinian leadership. And polling shows that a large majority of Palestinians celebrated October 7th attacks. This is not a society prepared for responsible governance or peaceful coexistence. It's a society radicalized through education, media, and religious incitement for generations. No international committee can undo that in a year, or even in a decade. If the West truly wants to help Palestinians, it must do what this plan refuses to address. It must support the slow development of responsible leadership. It must end the pay-for-slay payments. It must reform textbooks. It must hold leaders accountable for incitement in Arabic. And it must make all aid conditional on real political reform. It must shut down UNRWA, which has spent decades entrenching radicalization instead of resolving it. The only path to a lasting future is when two sovereign nations decide their future together of their own will. It can't be forced from the outside. Every attempt to do so has failed, and this plan will fail for the same reasons. And now on to our headlines. We have a lot to unpack this week when it comes to Iran. First up, the water crisis in Iran has morphed into a direct threat to the regime's very survival. Tehran, with some 10 million residents, is preparing for regular water cuts as dams fail and years of mismanagement collide with a severe drought. Now, the situation is worse than the regime is willing to admit. According to the most recent data, only 23.2 billion cubic meters of water entered Iran's dams by August 2025. That's a drop of 42% compared to last year and represents one of the lowest inflows in recorded history. More than half of major reservoirs are at or below 50% capacity, and one of Tehran's key dams is down to 8%. Nationwide, 10% of Iran's dams are effectively dry. Now, groundwater data is even more alarming. Iran currently extracts approximately 57 billion cubic meters of groundwater every year. And of Iran's 609 aquifers, more than 300 are in critical condition. Per capita renewable water resources have collapsed from nearly 4,500 cubic meters in the 1970s to roughly 1,500 today, which puts Iran firmly below the global water stress threshold. Now, the incompetent government blames climate change, but in reality, it's actually because of decades of corrupt infrastructure spending, shoddy maintenance, and the diversion of water to elite districts that's turned this resource crunch into a full-blown political crisis. Protests are already beginning in smaller towns where tap water is running out, and citizens are angry that their basic survival comes after the regime's foreign terror projects. This matters for Israel, of course, and its allies because a domestic crackup inside Iran could push the regime to escalate through its terror proxies or even through its nuclear program as a way to deflect public anger. Now, the water crisis also reveals a central truth about the Islamic Republic. This is a regime that talks about exporting revolution and building proxy armies, but it can't even keep the taps running in its own capital. Well, the trouble from the Islamic Republic of Iran doesn't end with the domestic crisis. However, the regime has once again escalated maritime tensions in the region after the IRGC Navy seized the Marshall Islands-flagged tanker Talara in the Gulf of Oman this week. The ship was carrying approximately 30,000 tons of petrochemical product when multiple fast craft surrounded it and forced it into Iranian territorial waters under what Tehran claims is a judicial order. Now, this incident took place just about 40 kilometers off the UAE coast near the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important energy chokeholds on the planet. Now, the significance of this move really cannot be overstated. First, it's a direct assertion of power by the Islamic Republic in a critical global trade route, where approximately 20% of the world's seaborne oil passes daily. By seizing a foreign tanker mid-transit, the Islamic Republic sends a clear message that it can disrupt global energy flows at any time it wants, sanctions or not. This is maritime coercion. Second, this seizure comes at a moment of heightened regional pressure on Tehran. After months of Israeli and American action against Iranian proxy terror networks and infrastructure, the regime is signaling that while its economy is struggling and water reservoirs are collapsing, it still has hard power options that can create global consequences. Third, it's not an isolated incident. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a long history of using tanker seizures to extract leverage and retaliate against international pressure. Now, it's done this repeatedly over the past decade, and every time it makes one thing clear. Even under sanctions, Iran's maritime and oil networks remain active and dangerous. For Israel and its allies, this serves as a warning. The energy waterways are a key front in Iran's strategic playbook. The Talara incident is a reminder that the Islamic Republic can project power far beyond its borders, and that any plan to contain the regime must include maritime security and tighter coordination against Iran's shadow fleet, which I'll get into in just a few minutes. So how are they getting away with it? Now, most disturbingly, data shows that the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is under heavy sanctions, has actually peaked in oil exports in the month of October, begging the question, how? Let's break it down. The truth is this regime is still making tens of billions of dollars every year from oil. Not quietly, not secretly, but openly. This is the single most important financial story driving the security crisis in the Middle East. It's the reason the regime can threaten Israel. It's the reason Hezbollah remains armed to the teeth. It's the reason the Houthis are able to fire missiles. It's the reason Iranian drones reach Europe and Africa. And almost no one is talking about it or understands what's actually happening. Despite sanctions, the regime is still exporting well over 1.4 million barrels of oil every single day. Now, if the global price of oil is $80 a barrel, Iran is selling it at a discount that brings it to about $60 or $65 a barrel. That means the regime earns approximately $100 million per day, every 24 hours, and none of it is going to the Iranian people. It doesn't rebuild hospitals. It doesn't fix the collapsing water system. It doesn't help families who cannot afford bread due to 40 to 50% inflation. This money goes straight to the regime's military system and its proxy terror network. And how does Iran get away with this while supposedly being under sanctions? It's because the regime has spent 4 decades building a global sanctions evasion machine. a perfected criminal economy run by the IRGC. They operate one of the largest illegal shipping networks on the planet. Analysts call it the Ghost Fleet. These are more than 300 old and, frankly, unreliable tankers that constantly change their names, fake their flag registrations, turn off their tracking systems, and vanish from radar. They perform ship-to-ship transfers in the middle of the ocean, usually at night. They repaint the hulls. They falsify documents. They spoof coordinates. Some of these vessels even travel with navigation systems turned off, which, of course, is incredibly dangerous, simply to avoid detection. And where does all this oil go? Almost all of it goes to China. China is the financial lifeline of the Islamic Republic. Chinese refiners buy discounted Iranian crude that is marketed as Malaysian blend or Oman heavy or generic fuel oil. This is not speculation. It's thoroughly documented by Reuters, tanker trackers, and multiple United States Treasury designations. So to summarize, the regime sells illegal oil, China knowingly buys illegal oil, and the world pretends not to notice because cheap oil benefits everyone except the Iranian people and all those who suffer from the terrorism that this regime exports. Now let's talk about where that money actually goes. Once the regime gets paid, likely through restricted Chinese accounts, the funds are controlled by the IRGC. The Revolutionary Guards and the Quds Force command these revenue streams through networks of front companies and, allegedly, through the giant construction and logistics conglomerate known as Khatam al-Anbiya. The money is then distributed across the regime's terror portfolio. Now, according to U.S. intelligence assessments, congressional research reports, and U.S. Treasury designations, Hezbollah receives an estimated $700 million to $1 billion per year. The Houthis in Yemen receive between $150 and $250 million. Iraqi militias receive between $100 million and $200 million. And Hamas receives an estimated $70 to $100 million each year, in addition to weapons, training, intelligence support, and engineering assistance for rockets and drone systems. So when people ask how Hezbollah keeps stockpiling rockets, or how the Houthis continue firing ballistic missiles, or how the Islamic Republic continues to expand its nuclear program despite sanctions, the answer is simple. The Islamic Republic of Iran is still making money every single day, and sanctions are not being enforced. Now here is the part that almost no one talks about. We could shut this down tomorrow. The only thing missing is the political will. There are 5 major pressure points that could crush the regime's revenue stream without firing a single shot. First, target the Ghost Fleet. Don't sanction ship names, which can be changed. Instead, sanction the hull numbers, which cannot be changed. If the United States and European Union banned 200 hull numbers from receiving insurance or entering ports, half of Iran's export capacity would collapse instantly. Second, go after the Chinese refineries that knowingly purchase Iranian crude. These facilities depend on Western equipment and Western financing. If even 3 of them were sanctioned, the entire network could collapse. Third, hit the front companies. Most of these firms in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and the UAE will collapse the moment they're listed by the U.S. Treasury. 4, seize ships again. When the United States captured the giant tanker known as Grace 1, it disrupted the regime's smuggling operations for months. Repeated seizures could deter the entire network. 5, cyber disruption. The IRGC uses specific Chinese bank accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, and payment pipelines for its oil trade. Cyber operations targeting these channels can cripple the entire machine. This is how you can collapse the Islamic Republic's financial backbone without a war, and how you force the regime to choose between funding terror proxies and surviving internally. The Islamic Republic is not sanctioned in practice, it's sanctioned on paper. And the moment the world chooses to enforce those sanctions with real consequences, Iran's financial lifeline ends. Now, jumping back to Israel, today we have a very special guest joining us to shed some light on the perspective of Christian Zionists after the recent fallout from pundits like Tucker Carlson, who now famously stated that he hates Christian Zionists and has been spearheading a hate campaign against them, along with several others who are self-declared right-wing pundits. Now, Sandra Hagee Parker is the chairwoman of Christians United for Israel Action Fund. She's also an attorney, author, and public speaker. This fund supports a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, standing up to anti-Semitism, defending Israel's right to self-defense and self-determination. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today on Axis of Truth. We're at a very unusual time in America, particularly, and in recent weeks, we've seen an alarming, well, what I consider alarming resurgence of blatant anti-Semitism in America, not only from Islamists, but from far-right extremists like Nick Fuentes. One of the most concerning aspects is that they're claiming to be Christian nationalists and to be supporters of President Trump. What's your take on this hijacking of Christianity that we see?
Emily, you said it exactly as it is. It's a hijacking. It is usurping the banner of Christianity in order to legitimize one's anti Semitism. And funnily enough, it's not new. This is something that has happened for centuries, whether you're talking about the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, Martin Luther, Adolf Hitler. Every generation has tried and failed to use the banner of Christianity as a way to authorize them to say and do whatever they want to the Jewish people and after 1948, the modern state of Israel.
Now, how can Christians fight against this pernicious trend of those speaking in the name of Christianity, yet actively espousing anti Semitic canards and stereotypes?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing for every single Christian to remember is that the Bible is above the Constitution, right? Right now, we kind of have this like wrapping ourselves in the American flag and free speech and the First Amendment. And of course, this is America and we hold that value sacrosanct. But your party is not your faith. And MAGA is not the same thing as being a Christian. And being a conservative is not the same thing as being a Christian. And I can understand how people can get confused because sometimes the platform of the Republican Party or conservatism has wrapped itself in Judeo-Christian values, which is outstanding. However, it's up to the Christian to be able to discern when what is being said from their party or their favorite pundit contravenes the word of God. And when it does, the word of God prevails. So it's important for a Christian to know why they support the state of Israel, because if their favorite pundit or their favorite party comes against the state of Israel, they cannot be moved.
Now, you frequently cited passages such as Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you, and Romans 11:1 and 2, in support of Christian Zionism as an aspect of Christian theology itself. Could you break down how you interpret those texts as mandating active support for Israel and how you respond to critics who say this interpretation conflates theology with foreign policy?
Well, first of all, Israel is not a policy issue for members of Christians United for Israel. It is not a political issue, it is a biblical issue. And for those of us that are old enough, we can all remember when American politics saw Israel the same way. Democrats and Republicans, independent, what have you, were pretty much unanimous in how they viewed the nation of Israel. So that modern politics decided to make Israel a policy issue is not on Christians. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible is a Zionist document. Christians, non-denominational evangelical Christians specifically, believe the entire Bible is true. The Old Testament is just as relevant as the New Testament. The Old Testament we see as God's will concealed. The New Testament is God's will revealed. Of course, they are written to different parties, different persons, but for the same purpose. And when you read in the Old Testament, when people say Old Covenant, you know, those are all euphemisms for replacement theology to try to make you think that the Old Testament is not relevant anymore. If the Old Testament is not relevant anymore, then God is not a covenant-keeping God, and God is a promise breaker. The Bible is either all true or it's all false. And so Christians believe, not just with respect to what the Bible says about the nation of Israel, Christians believe that with respect to everything, the Bible is true. God has left us a rule book, right? And so we don't make the rules, we just read them. And the Bible is extremely clear about the covenant that God made with the Jewish people. The Bible says that God's name is in Jerusalem, that Israel is the apple of God's eye. If Israel is important to God, then it is important to a Christian. Similarly, in the New Testament, when Paul says, I am of the tribe of Benjamin, have I been cast aside? Certainly not. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. I could go on, but you would have to have a faith that I am not capable of maintaining to go through the theological acrobatics to convince yourself that Christians have replaced Jews in the economy of God and that Israel is no longer important to God or Christians.
Recently, political pundit Tucker Carlson stated that he hates Christian Zionists, labeling some of their beliefs as a brain virus or even Christian heresy. Alarmingly, we also see a huge outpouring of support for Carlson instead of condemnation, even from many self-proclaimed Christian voices. Why do you think this is happening now, and how would you respond to these kinds of attacks?
Cowardice is why it's happening, whether one doesn't want to be ostracized from, I won't say the mainstream media because that doesn't exist anymore, right? It's about podcasts and all of these things. It used to be in news, if it bleeds, it leads. Now it's if it clicks, it sticks. And so it's hilarious to me that pundits, whose job is quite literally to have an opinion and to let their opinion be known, all of a sudden say, we're friends. I don't care if you're friends. Have them over for Christmas. It's irrelevant to me. But what do you say? What is your opinion about the views that he is espousing, about the views that he is legitimizing? As a pundit, your job is to either embrace or distance yourself from those. And I think evidence of the fact that Christian Zionists are here and not going away is the fact that Tucker issued a half-hearted, you can't even call it an apology. It's kind of like, that's not what I meant. Because whoops, millions of people don't like being told that they have brain rot. Because millions of people are actually educated on the Bible, and they see through his efforts to delegitimize Judaism, to de-Judaize Jesus. And, they're not going to stand for it. So we're only going to see more from the grassroots of Christians United for Israel, from the Christian church in general, whether you're a member of CUFI or not, that this is a bridge too far, because we believe that the creation of the modern state of Israel, the Bible says, a nation will be born in a day. The Jewish people coming to live in Israel are proof that God Almighty is who he says he is. And if you do not believe that, then you do not believe the Bible.
Does this kind of rhetoric matter in terms of how Christian Zionists are perceived? And will it affect your position or the position of CUFI going forward?
I mean, in terms of our mission, our mission will always remain clear. We have always been willing to go where the fight is. When we started CUFI, people were like, are you kidding? Anti-Semitism isn't real. Like, this is not 1940. What are you doing? And so we will always go where the fight is. And if that fight is now to what I would call the right of the right, I still think that we're absolutely dealing with fringe elements in the Republican Party. Of course, the largest vulnerability being the young people. We have seen how the policies in the classroom that are taught become the policies in the public square. And we have seen that what happened in America's colleges and universities after 10/7 shows the influence not of organic activism, but foreign influence have on America's colleges and universities. You've heard the rumor and innuendo of, who Tucker may or may not be partnered with respect to his business in terms of their influence in media. You've seen in entertainment. Entertainers go to Qatar and the Middle East, and then all of a sudden come back, and comedians who have no business in foreign policy, much less a working knowledge, say Israel be genocide. And you can see the influence of the enemies of Israel. The church cannot be bought and will not be bought. And as such, it's our job to do what we can to combat lies with truth and to show anybody that has any questions as to Israel, its role in the Bible, the Jewish people, and our mandate to stand with them. It's our job to make sure that they understand that and to create a place for them to feel welcomed to express that view.
How would you respond to the claim that Christian Zionists and all Zionists are putting Israel first and not America first? What does America first even mean to you?
America first doesn't mean America only. The Bible doesn't say America first, right? I am a Christian and I have national pride. I am not a Christian nationalist. To operate at the exclusion of others, I think, is kind of fundamentally unchristian. However, When I hear America first, when I hear President Trump say America first, I know President Trump doesn't mean America only. And you can see Trump's actions to see that he doesn't think it means America only. And if you are truly America first and you look at it completely agnostically and you don't give any mind to any other nation other than your own, then the most rational and reasonable thing that you can do as an American is continue to ally with Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, to continue to invest in Israel, because America doesn't spend money in Israel. America doesn't give foreign aid to Israel. America invests to Israel with an ROI that is exponential. People say aid as if they have their hand out asking for help. They are doing us a solid. They are fighting our shared enemies. They are defending our shared values. And by the way, they are buying machines and tools that we make in the United States of America, quite literally job stimulus and creation, improving upon it and sharing it with us for free. So hate Israel all you want, but if you care about America and if you care about your nation and if you care about national security and if you care about maintaining the American exceptionalism that has so far been responsible for relative peace in the world, then you should continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the nation of Israel and her people, because they are a large part of making sure that that continues.
As a final question, I want to ask you why it's important, not just at the theological level, but at a practical level, for Christians to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, especially now. I mean, would you differentiate even between the two, and why or why not?
It's a three-legged stool: God, Israel, and Jewish people. One doesn't exist without the other. And again, the existence of the three of them are proof that God is who he says he is, that the Bible is real. So to answer your question, though, we're not going to look at it through that righteous prism. Let's look at it through the rational prism. Again, we don't make the rules, we read the rules. And God doesn't differentiate between Jews and the nation of Israel. It's for God to differentiate and decide, but we aren't God, right? And so we aren't here to cherry pick who's Jewish enough, who's not Jewish enough, etc. The mandate is clear. And like I said, if you don't want to look at the Bible as a theological document, you don't have to believe in it. Look at history. What has history shown us? History has shown us that every single nation that has come against the nation of Israel has failed. And not only have they failed, they are in the dustbin of history. Of course, if you look at ancient history, you have the pharaohs, you have Haman, who hung from the gallows that he built for the children of Israel. In modern history, you have, we'll skip over the Ottomans and, all of those things, but go to more modern history, you have Hitler. Where are the goose-stepping Nazis? They're gone. You now have what we'll call the sons of Haman: Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. The day after the nation of Israel was born, it was attacked by 5 nations. Explain to me how a nation that was born in a day can defend itself against a larger enemy, against an enemy with more weapons, against an enemy with more people. A nation the size of Rhode Island that has been fighting a 7-front war for 2 years is victorious only because there is a God, he is real, and what he says is true. Whether you believe that or not, look at what history has shown us. If you come against the nation of Israel, including the modern state of Israel, things are not going to go well for you. And I want to clarify something, because I don't. Sorry, I'm editing myself. People say, you want to condemn the government of Israel, that doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. You're right. Thank you, Captain Obvious. You're right. If you condemn the American government, does that mean that you're anti-America? Nobody condemns the Israeli government probably more than Israelis. So it doesn't mean that you can't opine or have an opinion about the policy decisions of the Israeli government. As an American, are you allowed to have an opinion? Sure, but you're not the one fighting and bleeding and dying for your country, nor are our soldiers fighting and bleeding and dying for their country. They've never asked us the same. So you can absolutely criticize the nation of Israel, its policies, what have you. That doesn't make you anti-Semitic. But when you are holding Israel to a standard that you don't hold any other nation to, including your own, then you might be an anti-Semite.
All right. Thank you, Sandra Hagee Parker of Ku-Fi, for shedding some light on this issue.
Thank you so much, Emily, for having me.
And now the good, the bad, and the ugly of this week. The good news today is that even the most chaotic corners of American politics may finally be waking up. President Trump has now publicly called Marjorie Taylor Greene a lunatic in a new post and announced that he will support a primary opponent against her. And honestly, it's about time. This is the same member of Congress who once blamed wildfires on Jewish space lasers. She's also built an entire career around internet conspiracies. She also loves to brand herself as America First, yet she focuses obsessively on Israel and aid to Israel, even though 99.7% of that aid is reinvested in the U.S. economy through defense contractors and joint security programs. That is not an economic burden, that is an economic multiplier. In fact, the entire U.S. foreign aid budget is only 3% of the U.S. annual budget. So what exactly is she fighting for? Her claims of patriotism evaporate the moment facts enter the conversation. And now even her own political allies are saying out loud what everyone else already knew. She is not a serious legislator. She's a professional agitator who turned Congress into a conspiracy carnival. Next up, the bad story of the week, Dave Smith, who recently appeared on Konstantin Kissin's Trigonometry podcast and arrogantly proclaimed that the Islamic Republic doesn't pose a threat to any of the Sunni Arab nations. Take a look.
I flat out reject the idea that Iran is an existential threat to any of those Sunni states in the region. But Saudi Arabia, who are we talking about? Jordan? Egypt? Like
UAE? I mean, if you speak to people in those countries...
Yeah, I'm sure they're concerned about them.
They're very concerned.
Yes, of course. And there's a Sunni Shiite beef that's been going on for many, many years. And there's a lot. But the idea that, like, the U.S. sock puppet states over there are really threatened by Iran, I just don't think is right.
They do feel that.
Yeah, okay, fine. But, like, I don't think they're right about that. I don't think Iran is taking over Saudi Arabia. Like, what do you mean existential threat here?
Yeah, I think Saudi might like a word. Seriously, though, this is a prime demonstration of how American comedian Dave Smith, who has never lived in the region nor speaks any languages of the region, has no formal education or experience in anything even remotely related to international relations, history, politics, or religion, knows absolutely nothing about the Middle East, and particularly Iran, yet somehow still maintains the supreme arrogance of a Western-centric imbecile and thinks he knows better than those of us who actually live here. And now the ugly story for this week. The Babylon Bee posted a satire piece on Saturday mocking Megyn Kelly's sudden paranoia about imaginary Israeli assassination plots, playing on the 2024 exploding pagers operation against Hezbollah. They deleted it fast, but Kelly lost it on X, posting WTF, while her allies insisted that satire was a threat. This meltdown comes as parts of the American right increasingly fall down conspiracy rabbit holes, just like the baseless theories surrounding Charlie Kirk's death. But the real ugly here is Megyn's hypocrisy. She bashed Mark Levin this week for criticizing Tucker Carlson, yet refuses to condemn Candace Owens' open Jew hatred because, quote, she's a young mother. Tucker, she says he's a friend, so apparently friendship trumps calling out neo-Nazi rhetoric. She even mocked Mehdi Hassan when someone joked about pagers with him. Yet when she is mocked by a satire site, no less, she collapses. The right is turning into the very snowflakes that it used to mock. Well, that's it for this week on Axis of Truth. We'll be back soon with more interviews and more stories from the Middle East. I'm Emily Schrader. Be sure to follow me on social media, Emily K. Schrader or Emily in Tel Aviv. Thank you for watching and see you next week on Axis of Truth.
אני כל הרגל שלי פצועה, כל הרגל שלי יש לי חירורים, אבא כל הרגליים שלו, קרמל גם. אמא, לא, את אמא עומדת למות, אני אומרת לכם.
Do you want to know how hell looks like on earth? Welcome to Kibbutz Be'eri. 2 years ago exactly, on the 7th of October, the Bachar family was in hell. A 3-meter on a 3-meter hell. Come with me and find out this unbelievable story of the Bachar family.
We were in the safe room. We were 4 persons in the safe room. It's me, Dana. I have 4 children. My old son Rotem, he was in India in the same time, Nofar. The second is 19 years old. He's in the army.
And then you have Carmel and Hadar.
And Hadar.
And they were in the house with you and Dana.
6:30, the kibbutz with a lot of people. You know why? Because on October 6th, we just celebrate our birthday, the kibbutz birthday. It's been like 70 years. We are like 1,100 people, but in the same day, we were like 1,400. This is the master bedroom. We were here, and we start hearing the shooting. It's not the shooting, it's the thunder, like the missiles goes above us.
That whistle of the missile?
Yeah, a lot of them. So me and Dana here, and we are hear the rockets, and we know something happened. And
It's usual, right?
Yeah, it's usual. But in usual, there are 2 helicopters up, 1 drone, and after 5 minutes, a few missiles to Gaza, and that's it, it's done. This is the usual. But in the same day, it's not like that.
If I tell you in the world that the usual thing is that you hear rockets flying all over your head and then lands in your backyard, you can't say it's usual. This is missiles, rockets, literally sent from Gaza to Israel, to Kibbutz Be'eri. But the people here in Israel has gotten used to it. I promise you, you have no idea what we're talking about. So year after year, year after year after year, Hamas, the terrorist organization who ruled Gaza, kept sending missiles, launching missiles to Israel.
And I told Dana, okay, there is something wrong. And I told her, okay, let's go downstairs to see where's the children, and because our safe room is in the downstairs. This is Adar rooms, and we met right here. And this room, it's Carmel's room.
Carmel's room. Hadar, Carmel is here.
When we start to speak to them and say, okay, look what's going on, because all the rockets, and we start laughing on ourselves because we thought there was a rocket and, you know, like a zikukim, and came to Gaza to celebrate our birthday,
Fireworks.
and the fireworks, and we are and we're going out because we want to see the rockets. And we look up to the border, that's the border over there. So you can see all the rockets goes above all of.
That's Gaza over here. Just 4-kilometer walk. You know, if you can walk fast, it's 6 minutes per kilometer. Then you'd find yourself here within 24 minutes in Gaza just walking. That's how it's close to Kibbutz Be'eri.
And around 10 minutes to 7, you start hear the shooting in the middle of the kibbutz. And they came in, and they start shooting all over. They running through our place and where we live, and they start shooting everyone. And the chat start talking about everything. Also, they shoot these people, they burn this house, they kill this one, and everything in the chat.
Wow.
And,
So while you're standing here, you're looking at the WhatsApp group and you're literally seeing them just saying,
Exactly.
this was killed, this was killed, this was killed, this was killed.
Absolutely.
In the WhatsApp group, you're getting a message, go to the safe room.
Yeah, go to the safe room because there's a terrorist in the kibbutz. Okay. You have to go to the safe room.
And that was 7:10.
We got into the house, we shield the house, and we locked the door. I told Dana and Carmel and Adar, okay, let's go to the safe room. And Carmel told me, wait, Dad. He went to the kitchen. He brought a few hardcore steel knife. He played with them like that. And he told me, Dad, don't worry. We're going to fight with them.
What's a safe room? A safe room, it is a bomb shelter. So in terms of when rockets are being launched from Gaza to here, you go to this safe room, and plus minus you are protected even if a rocket falls very near the building that you are in, but only in a safe room. And that's why the Israelis on the 7th of October immediately ran to the bomb shelter, but then you told me that the bomb shelter became a trap.
A bomb shelter, you have to fight on the hand door because you can't lock the bomb shelters. Because if somebody want to help you, you just open the door.
You closed the door?
And we're waiting, yeah.
So you closed the door and you waited here?
We're waiting.
Was this window
Yeah, we
shut?
closed everything.
Everything closed?
Yes, we closed the two.
Everything
there's
closed.
two panel. There's two panel. We
There's
closed
also
the two.
here-
There's the stock. It's,
Yeah, of course,
yes,
it's shut because of that. But
so
you
we
have
closed everything. We also closed the glass.
So everything was closed?
Yes. Adar, she's sitting here, really close to the wall. And Dana, she's over there.
So Dana's here, Hadar is
Adar
here.
here.
You
Carmel,
are.
help me. It's around 8:30 in the morning. We hear the bell ringing. I'm standing right here. You know, like you are in stress, like you're holding like that, and Carmel helped me, and you hear the steps on the floor. You know that the terrorists, they're not coming to looking for us in the second floor. They come straight to the safe room.
They
because
knew.
of course they knew.
They knew.
They knew because they killed the people up. That means the other in the neighborhood.
So-
knew
and they-
that
and
the
they were
people-
in the safe
and
house.
They knew that all the people in the kibbutz, they are in the safe room.
Targeting intentionally civilians, knowing that they are going to be in the safe room. This is a war crime.
And the terrorists, they came, they start, you know, like a hand fight, exactly the same. Yeah, they tried to
Arm
open,
wrestling,
and
you know?
absolutely. They tried to open and we close. They tried to open and we close. And suddenly one of the terrorists told me, "Iftach al-bab, open the door." And told me, "Go away, ruh, for him, ruh."
Ruh, go away.
Yeah. And he told me again, open the door. And I didn't even say the second go, a shot through the door. We're holding the handle like that. And Carmel, my son, he's standing here.
And is he pushing
pushed
your hand
me
in and out?
About me, he pushed me. So this one, it's Carmel blood from his arm because this bullet took his arm, both arms. Carmel, you know, is with Arabic, so he cursed in Arabic. And he told me, he said, "Oh no, there's no Sri Lanka." Because it's supposed to be in December in Sri Lanka. He was a surfer.
Oh my God,
the
he
only thing,
joked about it.
yeah, the only thing he thought about, it's about the sea, his surfboard,
He's a surfer,
and his
huh?
surf. Yeah, he was a surfer. He was a great surfer.
That shot you in the arm and in your legs.
In my legs.
And you keep going.
I keep standing on that. The right leg is died. There's nothing left in the right leg. The left one, you feel something happened to her. You don't know exactly what happened.
Like it's
Like
burning,
it's
but
like you know,
it's-
when you go to the gym, you feel your muscle a bit
Yeah.
strong. That's how you feel.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
And I saw because I'm really recognized like that. I look to the floor, and I saw a few tears of blood on the floor, and I talked to myself. I said that, but I'm all right. And I saw that this bullet took my arm, and the blood go from my arms. So a few seconds later, I collapsed and fell into
What time that was?
9:30. 30 minutes later, there are heavy smoke getting.
Around 10 o'clock?
It's around 10 o'clock. It's a heavy smoke.
Where the heavy smoke is coming from?
They brought everything. In his berry, it was a system. First of all, they shot. Second, they burn. And later, when you jump out from the window, they kill you outside in the backyard. It's a system. There's 150 houses like that, or more than that.
אני לא יודעת איפה אמא נפצעה, אבל היא היחידה שכמעט מאבדת את הכרה, היא וכרמלה. אני ואבוד קצת בסדר, אני הכי בסדר.
Hamas terrorists, the Nukhba unit, which is the elite unit of Hamas, they came first, they did what they did, they left to another house. So now you're telling me that the civilians...
Yes, they gave the mission to other people, burn them.
And they're not like part of the Nukhba, they're literally
I don't know
Gazans.
who are they, but maybe it's not the Nukhba, because the Nukhba, they got the weapon and they go to kill the other people. But they know that, okay, if there's a heavy smoke in the safe room, you have to jump out from the window. And the Nukhba, they're waiting for you here, while they're not waiting here.
Gotcha.
And when you jump out, they kill you there.
Through that massacre on the 7th of October, not only official Hamas members, terrorists, took part of it, but also civilians took part in the massacre. And there's countless evidence to that, by the way, which you can see all over the social media of civilians, Gazans, who came to the settlements here in southern of Israel and literally took part of the massacre. They start burning, smoke is coming in.
Smoke coming in, a lot of smoke, a heavy smoke. Everything is closed. We open just the glass window. That's it. We open that one, and you can't breathe. And when you can't breathe anymore, I told them, okay, you have to take the pots of bebka with the pee and the towel, and with the blood, it's become like a glue.
Yeah.
And we put it on the face. You can breathe through it. It's easier, but it's not good for a long time.
So wait,
because
you breathe pee and blood?
Of course. You want to survive, you have to.
What happened after that?
The terrorists, they decide to open the window because they saw that we didn't jump out. They decide to open the window. They put a big bombs on the window. If you go for the other side, you can see it. And they explode this fucking window.
זרקו עלינו רימון, ברגל יש לי חור, אני מנסה להחזיק את זה, יש לי ברגל 5 חורים. זרקו עלינו רימונים, ירו בנו.
When they explode this one, the right one stuck in a frame is not moved. But the second one moved like 10 centimeters to the side.
So there was like a gap.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a gap. So for us, it was good. Because
smoke is getting out.
Absolutely. The hair comes from the door, and the smoke get in, go up, and go down. That's how it's going. So I'm looking around, so we are still alive. We are all right. But that's the good things. The worst things, we got 3 grenades inside. And when they throw the grenade hit the wall here and fell into the drawer.
That's the first explosion here, you can see it. That's the second explosion. And what about the third grenade? It didn't explode. So you had with you a grenade, live grenade, that did not explode.
Yes. You feel like your ears in the plastic bags. That's how you feel. I'm looking around, so we are still alive. So all the shrapnels, you can see all over, all the shrapnels go up, most of them. And the terrorists, they took like a metal stick, like a magnet stick. They put on the grenade, and they wrapped the grenade with metal balls, screws, and needles.
By the way, this is another act of a war crime, yeah?
And Ada, she told me, at the same time, that's not a real grenade. I tell you, why you say that? Because she's 13. And she told me because I got a lot of screws in my legs. And now we are bleeding, we are 3 bleeding in the safe room. Dana, until now, she's all right. And I'm, bleeding from my legs and in Carmel, but it's all right. But we were on the floor. We hear 2 shots, and Dana told me, I can't breathe. Adar, she tried to clean her a little bit. And she told Adar, it's done. And she told us, I don't have nothing for nobody in this world, and she died.
Avidai, you knew that your wife died.
Yes.
And you are without legs, with a bullet also in your arm, with a kid who is injured in his arm, they're trying to keep him alive. And you have a daughter that was also hit from shrapnels. And at this time, you realize that you lost your wife as well. Yeah. Yet you still have the power to tell your daughter,
Mom, she's all right. She's not suffering anymore. She died. We have to keep him alive. Around 4:30. Carmel, he knew that he never go out for the safe room. He knew that. Around 5 o'clock afternoon, Carmel, he got his short breath and he died.
Carmel, תישאר איתנו. אל תעצום עיניים. אמא, לא תישאר איתנו.
Before he died, he told me, Dad, don't don't forget, so burying me with the surfboard. And Adar, she saw me, and she told me, Dad, don't leave me alone. Because she saw me, I'm almost gonna die here. And she called 911 again. My dad almost gonna die, what I'm supposed to do. And the 911, they record everything.
בסדר. איפה היריות? הן מתחילות מהאגן עצמו או מהרגליים למטה?
Around 7:30, 7:15, the commander of Yalom, he came to this window. He took his flashlight, looked into the safe room, and told the other guy, there is a massacre here in the safe room. So if you want to live next to them, you can't. I think we gave them any money, any opportunities. They don't want to kill us. I think they want to live like us, but they don't. They don't want to live like us. They don't want me here. They want to take my land. It's not about something about religious. It's nothing. It's about territory and land. That's it.
You were in hell. There's no other definition to what you went through on the 7th of October. There's a lot of people around the world that either they deny what happened here, and clearly we can see the evidence is countless. Yeah? And of course your story as a first eyewitness that went through hell. What do you have to say to the world for those who are right now supporting the terrorist organization Hamas, literally advocating and echoing the narrative of Hamas?
We have to know that the Islamic here next to us, it's really want to kill us because our land. We can see the Palestinian here, and if you move to Europe, I'm sure it's going to be there also. And we have to keep on ourselves, and for the Jewish nation, I think we have to be in Israel. This is the only state that we got, and we have to keep on it for many generations forward.
That for them, there's no such thing as, let's have a dialogue. They don't think about, maybe let's hear the other side. There's no freedom of speech. There's also no freedom of religion. That's a different topic. But the bottom line is, you do not have dialogue with them because they don't believe in dialogue. They have their own way. You're either with them or against them. If you're with them, your life might be saved, But if you're against it, for sure, you're dead.
Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Alec Pollard, coming to you live from Israel with the top stories in the region. Starting with breaking news from Gaza, where IDF troops received unspecified findings a short while ago, collected by the Red Cross from Hamas. According to the Prime Minister's office, the IDF inspected the findings and held a short ceremony led by a military rabbi. The findings are now being escorted by the police to the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute in Tel Aviv for identification. Hamas has not officially announced the return of any hostages at this point, and it is not clear who of the two remaining deceased hostages the remains belong to, if at all: Master Sergeant Ran Gvili or Thai national Sudtisik Rinfalak. U.S. President Donald Trump has invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit the White House in the near future. The two leaders spoke by phone and discussed the importance of a commitment to dismantling Hamas's military capabilities and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, as well as efforts to expand regional peace accords. The trip will be Netanyahu's fifth White House visit since Trump returned to office in January. The call comes after Trump warned Israel not to destabilize Syria or its new leadership, days after IDF soldiers clashed with gunmen in southern Syria. Trump posted to his Truth Social account, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." Trump added that he is very satisfied with Syria's performance under its new president Ahmad al-Shara, a former commander in the al-Qaeda terror group who made a historic White House visit in November. In a meeting with injured IDF soldiers today, Netanyahu had this to say about dialogue with Syria.
אנחנו נחושים להגן על היישובים שלנו בגבולותינו, כולל בגבול הצפון, ולמנוע התבססות של טרוריסטים ופעולות עוינות נגדנו, להגן על בעלי בריתנו הדרוזים, ולהבטיח שמדינת ישראל תהיה פתוחה מהתקפה קרקעית ואחרת מהאזורים צמודי הגבול. מה שאנחנו מצפים בסוריה לעשות זה כמובן להקים אזור חיץ מפורז מדמשק ועד אזור החיץ, וכמובן מבואות החרמון ושיח חרמון. ברוח טובה, בהבנה של העקרונות הללו, אפשר גם להגיע להסכם עם הסורים, אבל אנחנו נעמוד על עקרונותינו בכל מקרה.
The IDF says it has eliminated a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in a targeted strike in Gaza against multiple terror targets and commanders across the Strip. Allah al-Din Abed el-Nasser Hassan Qudari, a Nukhba commander in the Islamic Jihad Gaza City Brigade, was killed in the operation, which the IDF says is a retaliation to Hamas's violations of the ceasefire in November. Qudari infiltrated kibbutz Nachal Oz during the October 7th massacre and continued to direct attacks on Israeli troops and civilians throughout the war. Nachal Oz was among the community's hardest hit, with dozens killed, wounded, and abducted. In further security news, 2 young Israelis were lightly wounded in a suspected stabbing attack near the Jewish community of Atarot, north of Jerusalem. The assailant was immediately neutralized. Another attack occurred earlier in the day when a Palestinian rammed a car at an IDF post at a junction near Hebron. A soldier was lightly wounded before the assailant was shot. Israel's new state-of-the-art weapon, the Iron Beam laser defense system, is about to go operational, and military officials say it will change everything about air defense. Starting December 30th, it will provide a high-speed, cutting-edge response to drones, rockets, missiles, and mortars. The system has already intercepted dozens of aerial threats during the war, including nearly 40 Hezbollah drones last October. With longer range and the ability to handle simultaneous attacks, Iron Beam is a significant upgrade to the current Iron Dome defense system, and unlike missiles, which cost over $100,000 per interception, firing the laser is as cheap as turning on a light, promising massive savings for Israel. The system will be deployed nationwide, operating alongside Iron Dome commands, striking threats instantly, often before sirens are even needed. This marks the first full-scale operational deployment of a high-energy laser weapon in the world. That's all for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. Thanks for watching.
President Trump just greenlit the sale of America's most advanced warplane to Saudi Arabia, the F-35. Israel's once guaranteed aerial dominance now appears to be on the line. At the same time, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman says he's ready to join the Abraham Accords if there's a path to Palestinian statehood. That came only hours after the UN Security Council unanimously backed Trump's 20-point Gaza plan. Are Israel's war goals being achieved or slowly dismantled behind closed doors? Stay tuned for today's Israel Undiplomatic. Shalom and welcome to another episode of Israel Undiplomatic. I'm Mark Regev speaking to you from Jerusalem, and this week Ruthie Bloom is speaking to us from North America. She's in New York City. And Ruthie, did you get a chance to watch last night the press conference between President Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince?
Yes, I did. What do you think about this? Listen, you know that I have mixed feelings
So Ruthie, I think you overstate the concerns and you understate the benefits of getting a deal with Saudi Arabia. And this is something President Trump wants. This is something that Benjamin Netanyahu wants. This is something that I think is good for Israel. I think it's good for the United States if it's possible to do. Now, of course, you raise the legitimate issue of when they say they're a Palestinian state, this is something that Israel's not going to agree to, not anytime soon at least. And so how are we going to have this breakthrough with Saudi Arabia? And I think the answer is, do the Saudis just want to tick the box? In other words, to say there's some words there, or do they actually expect it to happen? And many people, serious people, think that it's more ticking the box. They have to sort of tell their people in the other Arab and Muslim countries that they got something for the Palestinians, but it doesn't have to be something substantial. And here I'd remind you of the 60 Minutes interview that President Trump gave, 2 weeks ago now? And when he was asked specifically, well, the Saudis won't agree to peace without Palestinian statehood, he sort of gave a flippant answer saying that's just not serious.
Right. But you see, this is my problem. Whenever we say, well, these Arab leaders, they just have to tick the box, as you put it, or I would say they're talking to their people and they have to pay lip service to it. That's exactly what worries me. It's not that I don't agree with it. I know the Saudis don't care at all about the Palestinians. We know that because they never help them or do anything. We also know that the Saudis hate the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's who Hamas is, and we know that. But if the Arab leaders feel that they have to satisfy the Arab street, so-called, by paying lip service to that, well, what does that tell you about the Arab street? I mean, we've seen what happened with Egypt after all these years, where the government of Egypt, all those decades ago, made a peace deal with Israel, but the street in Egypt remained highly anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, the media, the schools, everything. That's what concerns me. Also, we know that this President Trump's 20-point plan anyway includes a clause about a path to Palestinian statehood. And we agreed to that all along because any conditions put on the Palestinians in order to be granted statehood, we know that they won't live up to that. They can't because it's not part of their ideology. They're not going to reform and they're not going to, so we know that that's not happening. And we know that Israel, most Israelis have reached the conclusion after October 7th that there's no way that's happening. Maybe in 1,000 years when you and I are long dead. Okay, we know that. But as I said, we have to be careful about getting all excited about, peace with our Arab neighbors when what it is, as you say, you always say this, mutual interest, that's well and good. But I wouldn't call it necessarily peace if the way to appease the street is by winking and saying Israel's behaving badly in Gaza.
The only real street that the leadership in Saudi Arabia has to worry about is the Saudi people. And here, because the Americans are putting all these sweeteners on the table, whether it's a defense pact, whether it's the F-35s, whether it's the 300 tanks, whether it's the upgrading of the military relationship, all these things together, whether it's the nuclear reactor or cooperation in nuclear, it's not clear to me what that is at this stage. But they can sell this deal to their people that they'll say this makes Saudi Arabia stronger and safer and we can protect ourselves better. And we've also enhanced our security relationship with the United States. So that'll be their argument to their people, that this is a good deal for Saudi Arabia. On the other issue that you raised, that it won't be a real peace, look, let's be frank here. Peace is often based on political self-interest. And I want to stress why it's in Israel's interest to move forward on this. Because I think we said it a few months ago on this podcast. Making a deal with Saudi Arabia is not just making a deal with another Arab state. Saudi Arabia has a special position in the Arab world. Saudi Arabia has a special position in the larger Muslim Arab world. It is the custodian of the two Muslim holy sites of Mecca and Medina. And if the Saudis move on Israel, if they normalize their ties, it'll not stop there. You'll have other Arab and Muslim countries following suit. Important countries like Indonesia, other countries too. And if that happens, that's a game breaker. And I would argue, Ruthie, if one talks about defeating Hamas, so we're defeating Hamas militarily in Gaza, fighting this war, we've destroyed them, we've decapitated their leadership, we've destroyed their military machine. But the ultimate political defeat for Hamas, in my opinion, the ultimate political defeat for them is to have a country like Saudi Arabia recognize Israel, make peace with Israel, normalize ties with Israel, because when a country of the Islamic credentials like Saudi Arabia makes peace with Israel, that is Hamas's worst nightmare.
Oh, no, there I agree with you totally. But by the way, when you say things like he has to sell it to his people, again, let's not kid ourselves about what kind of kingdom this is, all right? Sell it to the people? That sounds like you're talking about a democracy. You know, he's running for election. No, he's the crown prince. MBS is a crown prince. It's true, he says, he's modernizing Saudi Arabia. So, 5 minutes ago, he allowed women to learn how to drive, okay? And maybe in 10 years, he'll allow women to be able to leave their homes without a male escort. What I'm trying to say is make no mistake about who the Saudis are. We spend a lot of time saying that Hamas are barbarians, and they certainly are. And so is Fatah, even though you disagree with me on that a bit. But what I'm trying to say is are you under some illusion about what kind of regime you have there, where if somebody is caught stealing, his hands are chopped off? This is not the kind of thing, as I said, interests are well and good, but you always have to keep your eye on the ball with regimes that behave like that. They are barbaric, even though MBS is very classy and he knows how to talk to the West. But that's not a Western country, and by the way, not that I have such love these days for Western countries. I just would also like to point out something very ironic about the UN Security Council vote in support of the U.S.-led resolution on the 20-point plan that the UN passed overwhelmingly. What's ironic about it is that in the plan, it says that there's going to be a pathway to a Palestinian statehood. Now, remember all those countries at the UN that announced that they were recognizing a Palestinian state already. We're talking about Western countries, I mean. And so if they signed on to this, what they're saying is they're acknowledging that there's no Palestinian state. There's a pathway to a future one. So all they're doing is sort of undercutting their own recent declarations about how they're calling it Palestine. And you're talking about all these countries at the UN. And so that to me is kind of ironic. And also the good sign is that Hamas is against the resolution and against the plan.
So it's like if Hamas is against it, it's probably a good thing. And
Yeah.
I think there's a certain amount of truth in that. I'd like to raise the issue that these same governments who recognize Palestine now vote for a resolution that says in the future there might be, if they meet certain conditions, a Palestinian state. I think that's typical UN and diplomatic hypocrisy, and we don't have to worry about that. That's what is it? That's part of the course. That's normal behavior. Yes. I'd like to raise that there are some very serious issues that there's been discussion on in Israel about people very worried about the Saudis getting top-rate U.S. military equipment, especially the F-35s. Makes a lot of people unhappy in Israel. They're worried about that. They were unhappy when it looked like the Emirates were going to get it. In the end, the Emirates didn't get it for different reasons, but the idea that Saudis would get that sort of top-tier U.S. equipment, and there was concern about the nuclear cooperation and so forth. But I want to say my opinion on this issue, right? I think it'll be incumbent on the United States, if they do go forward and if they do sell all this American equipment to Saudi Arabia. There's an act of Congress that goes back years now, which is QME. There's a guarantee by the United States to give Israel maintain Israel's qualitative military edge. In other words, because we are outnumbered in our region and we're smaller than most of our neighboring states, and that we're, and we're outgunned often, we have to have quality against quantity. And that was an American commitment to maintain our quality. And F-35s gives Israel a huge qualitative advantage in the skies. Now, if the Saudis are supposed to get this equipment too, as part of a normalization agreement with Israel as part of peace, I would hope, and I believe the Israeli government should be pushing for this very strongly, that there is adequate technological compensation for Israel in order to enhance and maintain our QME, our qualitative military edge. And I think the Americans should consider maybe giving us, now I'm not from the Air Force, but an Israeli wish list could include things like the B-2 bomber, which was so successful in attacking those bombers in Iran. I mean, if Trump wants to sell equipment and he wants to maintain our QME, he can do so.
No, absolutely. But here, don't forget that Trump this is nearing, it's not the end of his administration. Of course, he's got another 2.5 years to go. We don't know which administration is going to be in power in Washington in 2.5 years. Is it going to be a Republican administration? Is it going to be a Republican administration from the isolationist camp? Is it going to be from the more Israel supportive Trump camp? Is there going to be a Democrat president? All of these things in global politics, 2.5 years is nothing. And so we don't know what's going to happen with all these promises from Trump toward Israel. That's one thing. The other thing is, Israel's need for qualitative military edge already presupposes war. It means that Israel knows it has to, in this region, it has to always have its powder dry because it's surrounded by enemies. Now, if peace is busting out all over, and if Saudi Arabia joins the Abraham Accords and other countries follow, theoretically, why do you need to have all these stealth bombers and all this stuff? Because what that means is that everybody acknowledges, tacitly and openly, that the Middle East doesn't have peace. It has quiet between wars. And, so my feeling is, okay, that's all well and good. But if we need a qualitative military edge and we need to guarantee it, it's because we know that there's not going to be peace, not for a long time, not forever. It's not okay. It's not like even after World War II, where you have Germany has peace with its neighbors and with America. In the Middle East, obviously nobody actually believes it.
Ruthie, I have a different perspective, as you know, because I think the two go hand in hand. I believe in peace through strength, which I think is something that American presidents have said over the years. But you have peace by showing you have the ability to defend yourself. There's no contradiction between saying that Israel wants peace with its neighbors, and we have to maintain our qualitative military edge. They go hand in hand. Your ability that you are strong actually deters war and helps keeps the peace. I think it's a crucial element. And so, once again, I don't see any contradiction on your larger point about we live in a region where the politics is a bit, there's not a democracy around Israel, and we live in all sorts of regimes, some of them totalitarian, some of them feudal and so forth in our neighborhood, some of them just old-fashioned military autocracies, yes, military dictatorships. But Ruthie, first of all, you yourself said a moment ago that we don't know what's going to happen in America when Trump finishes his term 3.5 years from now. That's a good point, okay? We don't know what's going to happen in America. We don't know what's going to happen with our neighbors either. But if you have the assumption or philosophy that we can't make deals and make peace agreements with our neighbors because they're not democratic, well, we're not going to make peace with any neighbors because we don't have a single neighbor who's democratic. Let's be frank. That's the reality. And if you say, okay, before you said, women in Saudi Arabia have limited rights. They might be able to drive, but they can't leave their houses without a guardian and so forth and so on. I don't know what the details are. I don't keep a close eye on this. But if Israel waits for our neighbors to become Western-style democracies, well, we're waiting a long time for peace. We've got part of realpolitik is knowing what is possible and making the best with the hand you've been played. Now, our neighbors are our neighbors. Do we want to live with them in war or do we want to live with them in peace? And if it's possible to live in peace with them, that's obviously better. I also want to say something. I went to one of these Track 2 dialogues a few months ago between Israelis and members of, Arab countries. And there was a Saudi there who said very interestingly something like this. He said, all the West, he wasn't talking about Israel, but he was saying the West presses Saudi Arabia to reform, presses Saudi Arabia to make democratic reforms. Well, Saudi Arabia is reforming. Saudi Arabia is moving forward, according to his opinion. And there have been changes in many ways. Under the Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia has been opening it up and becoming more liberal internally, but it's still very much an authoritarian regime. And this Saudi was saying, if you open up the political regime, if you change the political system, maybe you're not going to have the stability that allows you to make this sort of steady reform process, economic reform, social reform, religious reforms. In other words, maybe we should accept our neighbors for what they are and work with them as best we can.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying you shouldn't work with them. I'm saying don't fantasize about some great peace. Now, I have to say, on behalf of the United Arab Emirates, at least after they signed the Abraham Accords, we saw real change. We saw their efforts to encourage Israeli tourism. They even opened up kosher restaurants, things like that. Okay, that is already, the proof was in the pudding, and they really acted on it until October 7th. As soon as we were under massive assault from, let's face it, their own enemies as well. Like you say, the Abraham Accords countries are anti-Hamas. But nevertheless, they right away jumped on the bandwagon of saying we were committing atrocities. And so that was worrisome. Now, Saudi Arabia is a different story because Saudi Arabia is nowhere near as quote unquote modern as the United Arab Emirates, for example. And MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, yes, he's very Western educated. He knows the West, et cetera, et cetera. But don't be fooled by him. He's no Westerner. And I'm not saying that you have to, that you can't make deals with your neighbors. Of course you can. What I'm saying is they're not to be trusted, as we saw after October 7th. And we already had qualitative military edge. Look what happened. It took 2 years. It's still going on. It took 2 years for us to be playing whack-a-mole with enemies from all over the place. And they were the Iranian axis. But did the other axis, the anti-Iran axis, help Israel? Not really. It was sitting and waiting to see who emerges victorious. What I'm saying is that don't be under illusions about those countries. The other tricky part about this is that, Iran, when the Shah of Iran was in power, he began reforming Iran. Now, he was hated for his opulent lifestyle and all this, but he actually liked the West. He liked Western movies. He was reforming. And that opened the door, ironically, sadly. His reforms opened the door for the Ayatollah Khomeini, for the radical Islamists to take over. Okay, so that's another thing that can be happening in a country like Saudi Arabia, is that reforms backfire in that way as well. I'm just saying that that I would be concerned about Israel's not maintaining its qualitative military edge, because even when we had it, you say peace through strength. Look what happened on October 7th and afterwards. I'm not talking about just that day when Hamas invaded Israel. Hamas is a crappy little terrorist organization. I'm talking about the wider region and the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a massive operation globally. So all I'm saying is that I was extremely disappointed in the behavior of our Abraham Accords partners after October 7th. They should have stood by Israel without question, since they knew that this was Iran's axis. They are enemies of Iran. And yet, when it comes down to it, when it's the Jews, they're not so anxious to jump in and defend Israel as the state of the Jews or the Jews worldwide. And I said, that's all I said, is we cannot be under any illusions.
I'm not under any illusions, Ruthie, but I also look at the half glass that is full. Because you can say correctly that the Abraham Accords countries criticized Israel's handling of the war. I think the Saudis and some others, even accused Israel of genocide, like some of our European used-to-be friends would say the same things, yes? But let me remind you of the following. When French and British and Austrian and German airlines weren't flying to Israel, there were daily flights every day from the UAE to Israel and back, right? They didn't close down their air traffic. There were one or two odd days because of particularly bad fighting with Iran or something during the 12-day war and so forth. But for the whole, the UAE and the other Abraham Accords countries were much stronger on the relationship than some of our traditional friends, in inverted commas. And that needs to be said. And if you say specifically about the Saudis, now, I don't know any military secrets. I've been out of government for too long to know any military secrets, yes? But I know what was reported in the international press. And it was reported in very authoritative sources that during the war with Iran, during the recent rounds of fighting with Iran, and especially during the 12-day war, that the Saudis were giving assistance indirectly, directly to the anti-Iranian coalition. So if they speak out and vote against me at the UN, but they're helping me win the war against Iran. And then, of course, there were the Israeli operations against the Houthis in Yemen. That's right on Saudi territory. There were reports of Israeli Air Force planes flying. I don't know if it's true or not, but the report said they were flying over Saudi airspace, that the Saudis were hoping to facilitate Israeli operations. So I think even in a situation of non-normalization, you can, from reading the international press, you can presume that Israel and Saudi Arabia are having tangible, mutually beneficial cooperation. And that's all I'm saying. By having normalization, we can probably expand that. Does that mean the Saudis are always going to vote with us at the UN? No, they won't. Most of the world doesn't. Will they be better and better positioned to help Israel be stronger and safer in the region? Will it help strengthen the anti-Iranian axis? Will it help strengthen those forces who are against the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas? Yes, yes, and yes. And so I think this is a road worth traveling on. I don't think, my eyes are wide open. I understand the limitations. I understand the sort of regime in Saudi Arabia. I understand that their need to be part of the Arab and Muslim world. I understand all that. But knowing all that, I still think we're doing much together, apparently, under the table today. We can do much more on top of the table once we have normalization. I think it can work to Israel's advantage. I think it can work to the advantage of Saudi Arabia. There was one issue that bothered me, and that was the talk when Biden was still president, that the Saudis wanted nuclear enrichment as part of getting a nuclear energy program from the Biden administration as part of peace with Israel. And there are Arab countries with nuclear reactors, but no Arab country has the ability to make enrichment. And the Saudi argument was that they needed this because the Iranians also had enrichment. Okay? Now it's very interesting. I'm reading between the lines here, and maybe I'm guessing, and I don't want to guess, Ruthie, but I don't have a choice here. No one talked about enrichment now in this recent visit at the White House, not publicly at least. Nothing was leaked to the press about enrichment. The Saudis weren't talking about enrichment. Is it possible, because in the 12-day war that Israel and the United States destroyed the Iranian nuclear program, that the Saudis are less under pressure to have their own enrichment capabilities? Maybe that's another indirect or direct outcome of the war against Iran.
Well, I certainly would agree they probably feel it's less urgent, but they are talking about nuclear power. Not enrichment, okay? But that's the first step, okay? So, again, you have to be careful. And yes, the Saudis and Israel have been working behind the scenes, cooperating behind the scenes for quite some time now. That's true. But my point is this, we always used to say how we would know that the Palestinian Authority had reformed, or, I hate calling them Palestinians because that's not what they are. They're Arabs who live in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. Okay. But what we used to always say for decades, we said the minute, and that started from the days of Arafat, the minute that they say anything in Washington, the minute we want to hear them say it in Arabic to their own people in their own language, not just to satisfy Washington or somebody else. And even though in today's day and age, you can translate any language into any language very easily at the press of a button, still, there is a difference between what MBS says in Washington and what he says in Arabic. And when we can trust that there's change in the air, genuine change, is when you hear leaders in the Arab world addressing their own people in Arabic about these issues and about reforms. That's when you can say, wow, there are winds of change blowing.
So I agree, and there are already the beginning of those winds of change, positive winds of change we've seen. And I think even you would agree with me, in the UAE, the way they speak about Jews, the way they're fighting extremism in their mosques and in their universities, very positive changes. Also in Bahrain, also in Morocco, countries where they have serious discussions about Jews and the Holocaust and the creation of Israel, and this sort of anti-Semitic myths that used to be out there, part of the public discourse, that they've been discredited. I'm not saying they're totally gone. Of course, they're there in parts of the society, but as a government, as an official society, they are on a different level. And I think that should be the example of Saudi Arabia. And I think it'll be very important for Israel to see if we move forward with Saudi Arabia, and I hope we do, and I think there's a good chance we will. We have to look, as you say, internally, how are they talking to their own people internally about Jews, about Israel. I mean, ultimately, Ruthie, I mean, I'm not an expert on the Muslim holy book, on the Quran, yes? But the Quran talks about Muhammad fighting with Jewish tribes in the Arabian Peninsula, okay? Now, you can say, okay, if you want to be anti-Semitic, you say that's a sign that Muhammad had to fight the Jews because they were terrible people, yes? But it can also be a sign that actually the Jews date back centuries in the Middle East, that we're an authentic part of the region. The whole idea that we're some sort of foreign colonizers who came here and took, we had no right to be here, we had no roots here. It's rubbish, right? And it says so in their own holy book. If we get more serious discussions about that sort of thing, and I agree with you, I'm for a deal with Saudi Arabia, under any conditions. I think not under any conditions. I would say that I want that deal with Saudi Arabia. I think Israel can take calculated risks to get that deal. But after that deal is signed, I'll be very interested to see if Saudi Arabia follows the example of the UAE and we see this sort of education for peace and coexistence and for understanding, or if it's more like Egypt, unfortunately, our oldest peace partner, where you get a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of anti-Semitic, anti-Israel stuff in their education system. And then you ask a question, why is my people so hostile to peace? Because they're being taught to be hostile to peace.
Well, obviously, but Egypt, it's not just that that Egyptians are very anti-Semitic, and we see that again in their cartoons, in their, in their whole culture. We see that. It's not just that. We also discovered that Egypt was complicit in Hamas's arming and rearming. And even to this day, there are drones going over from Egypt with weapons into Gaza. Now, how is that ironic? Because Egypt so hates the Muslim Brotherhood that it doesn't want a single Gazan inside its borders and blocks it off and didn't help any of the so-called, Egypt was accusing Israel of committing genocide and unjustly attacking women and children in Gaza. Did Egypt take them in? No. Did Egypt let them come into even the massive Sinai desert? No. All right. But it isn't stopping them from sending weapons into Gaza while mediating, hostage releases. And the same thing with Qatar. Qatar was a mediator and complicit in the whole business, in the whole massacre, in the whole. So, they were negotiating for hostage releases and they were supporting Hamas. So this is what I mean about, being, you have to be careful about who you call your partners for something even resembling peace. And yes, there are interests. And yes, Saudi Arabia, as I said, the trouble with listen, recently Saudi Arabia has this annual comedy festival in the square where they used to chop people's head off. I mean, maybe they still do that, and I'm not sure, but it was nicknamed Chop Chop Square, and in Riyadh, where they have invited and paid lots of money to American comedians to go over and perform in a comedy club, and many of these comedians, took the money and went over there. Now, why was that problematic? The comedians, who it was all very well and good, the Saudis were happy to hear these comedians make fun of America, make fun of Trump, make fun of gays and women's rights and all that, because they're funny. These are comedians who hate woke. But guess what? They had to sign before before being allowed into Saudi Arabia, that the one thing they would not make jokes about is the Saudi regime. So, it's like that old joke about the Soviet and the American. The American said, I live in such a free country, I can stand on the White House lawn and say, screw the president of the United States. And the Soviet said, wow, what a coincidence. I can stand on the Kremlin lawn and scream, screw the president of the United States as well. So that's all I'm saying here. Be wary about all these reforms. And MBS, as I said, very elegant guy. And, Trump said, he's so handsome or whatever he says to him. And he knows his stuff, MBS. That's no question about it. But make no mistake, whatever reforms he's implementing are at such a snail's pace, as far as we're concerned, that, you're not even allowed to make a joke about the regime.
We're running out of time, but I would remind you that you said yourself that reform in these sort of countries has to be handled very carefully, because you mentioned the example of Iran and the Shah, that maybe reforms, if they'd been done more cautiously in Iran, we would never have had the Ayatollah regime. So just to think about that. I also want to say I disagree with you. I don't want to whitewash the Egyptians, but I make a distinction between Qatar and the Turks, who have an ideological affinity with Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and that sort of crowd, and between the Egyptians, who were complicit in allowing Hamas to rearm, but I don't think they were actually doing it themselves. In other words, all turning a blind eye or taking corruption or so forth and so forth. But there's a difference there, because, as you said correctly, they don't like the Muslim Brotherhood, they don't like Hamas in Egypt. Is Egypt a friend of Israel? Well, we have a formal peace treaty, but the relationship could be a lot warmer, and it's not because the Egyptians have chosen it to be that way, and that's an issue, and that's a problem. But because we're running to the end of our time, we'll have to say goodbye until next week, Ruthie. Because you're our person now in North America, maybe next week you can tell us what else is happening at the White House, but until then, look after yourself.
Okay, you too, Mark. Looking forward to seeing you next week.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has submitted a request to President Herzog asking for a pardon that would end his 6-year corruption trial. In a video statement released minutes after submitting his pardon request, Netanyahu says that ending his trial is essential for Israel's national interest. Netanyahu notes that judges recently ordered him to testify 3 times a week, and says a letter from U.S. President Donald Trump urging Herzog to grant the pardon also influenced